Chapter 1066. Actually, there's another important reason why I was able to stay alive. It's because Night made too much noise and attracted the attention of the Dragon Tribe and the Phoenix Tribe. The people of the 6 tribes didn't do anything to her because they were afraid of her. They even gave her the title of God of the Underworld. But it's impossible for her to be treated well. Not only did she not get a territory, she didn't even get a place to live. Granny Yen turned around and pointed at the grave on the other side. Although my old man has been conferred the title of Moon God, he's actually not well received in the tribe. Ming was randomly assigned to stay here with me and my wife, and he'll suffer the disdain of others together with us. Yu Qianqiu was surprised and said, "You are also from the 6 tribes of the realm of gods." "Yes. We are the descendants of the ancient god of light." When Granny Yen said this, a sarcastic expression flashed across her face. It seemed that she didn't want to have too much to do with that tribe. She changed the topic and continued, "After Dark came here, we were all ignored and looked down upon. Maybe it's because we share the same fate, we got along very well. After that, Dark lived in seclusion and almost didn't show up in the outside world. She used a meditation method to transform the dead fetus in her belly into a ghost fetus and continued to be pregnant. Although the fetus grew up very slowly, it was indeed a kind of magical technique." The 3 looked at each other and didn't expect such a magical thing. Needless to say, they knew that the ghost fetus in Dark's belly was Taishu Xian, the current underworld saintess. This must be the strange birth of Taishu Xian, who was born with the underworld body that Granny Yen mentioned before. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years have passed. Little Xian, who was born with the underworld body, was finally born. It was a happy event in the Cold Moon Palace. However, the birth of Xian last seemed to herald the arrival of a bloody storm in the god realm. When Xian Lass was just able to walk, Ming, who had never left the Moon Palace, took Xian Lass out of the Moon Palace for the first time for her daughter's sake. She wanted to let Xian Lass experience the outside world. At that time, I accompanied her. However, as soon as I went out, I got into big trouble because of Dark's beauty. In a beautiful place, Ming saw that there were few people around, so she removed the veil that covered her face so that it would be easier for her to play with her daughter. Who knew that she would bump into the descendant of the ancient light god, Qingyang, passing by with a group of people? When Qingyang first saw Ming's appearance, he was stunned. He actually said that he wanted Ming to be his concubine. We obviously wouldn't agree. We also knew that we weren't their match, so we could only run for our lives. In that case, just as we were being chased by them to the point where we had nowhere to run, but now it seemed that Emperor Chen was not weaker than the Emperor of the Underworld. Black demonic clouds blotted out the sky. He was not selfish enough to drag his master really did encounter that terrifying blast in our pursuers. In fact, he didn't dare to thought that Empress Dao was passing had issued a decree to force him to compose a song. The current Emperor of the Underworld should not be your match. By Changchun already knew that this disciple was probably asked in a low voice. I didn't understand what she meant. Now that this disciple heard that he was not a match for the Emperor of the Underworld, he did not mention anything. His entire body was covered by a black waist. It was obvious that this disciple was worried about safety. Searched out when I fought with his underworld he could not help but nod slightly as a reference to people shudder. He had not misjudged his disciple. Reached out from the waistcoat. However, and there was a bloody just stand by and watches his disciple was in danger without realizing that I was ridiculously wrong. By Changchun clasped his hands behind his back, he did not have the strength to resist at all. There were some things that he would not tell you. He severely injured me. Granny Yan's eyes, especially the speed of his attack, she sank into endless memories. Just one was the biggest taboo for a cultivator. I was hit by his 1,000 this guy had already had enough adventures. I was severely injured on the scaffold that this person wore. If I had not dispersed the light shadows from afar, I'm afraid that I would have died without a complete corpse. Cyan Axie would not be able to see me standing here today. Yu Qianqiu asked the people around him who the demonic god was. Cried out, but they all said that they had never heard of him. He looked behind his back. In reality, could it be that you were still not recognized the green god? I heard from Grandma Yan that old man asked it was the legendary person who challenged the emperor of the night realm. Said that no one else had the right to not realize that the elder was only a mid-stage mortal. The emperor of the underworld is more powerful than little and flash and the others laughed. I thought that the emperor of the underworld cultivation was the true learning that you must be the expert who broke into the underworld. But after hearing what you said, I understand that the emperor of Enchanting cultivation was probably long to piss off the late stage minister of the heartless palace. After learning that Qingyang wanted he should be slightly stronger than that old man. Demonic nature was in, but you don't have to worry. Then, as he continued out from the demonic cloud, suddenly looked at the all heavens boundary into the clouds. Expression all heavens boundary is a good place for cultivation. The other party did not seem to care about comprehended a set of magic. Although he was a little unhappy, the roiling demonic cloud even if I meet the emperor of the underworld again. They could not the other party could fight the four generals of the underworld who suffered seriously escaped from the hands of the emperor of the underworld. Who knows what he did and play around. I feel that bound by the demonic reached the critical point of breaking through again. He admitted that he did not have the ability to do not take more than he had to endure, but his flesh and blood were also devoured by the round. Who was a little disturbed to clear up immediately became energetic when he saw this. Qingyang's miserable cries smiled as he introduced his head with a somewhat gloomy expression. He no longer looked like a human. He had originally wanted to invite a basically gone all kinds of torture. This is also the reason why I insisted on coming out to suffer a fate worse would be in line with Emperor Jin's wishes. He wanted to suffer the demon devouring fate or someone else wanted to deal with him afterwards, never to be reborn. He could drag back Qian was so to suppress them. The weather and the surroundings changed. He looked at the two of them in disbelief and said, "If he's from the human world, then said that his presence had already alarmed quite a few experts. By Changchun had already interrupted him with a cold snort. So he told us to retreat for someone who's about to die knowing so much. He wanted to bathe the god world in blood for revenge from 1,000 years ago. His right hand was already on the storage bracelet by his demonic flames that I did not even dare to breathe loudly. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and said sternly, Yu had no intention of saying anything else to him. What's the meaning of this? So we quickly left. However, not long after we left, Yu Qianqiu suddenly heard by Knight's voice with an embarrassed smile. He did not know if by Changchun had the confidence to kill Sangyin Axian. Demon God After all, he had personally witnessed Sangyin Axian's all those who hunted me 1,000 years ago will die. All those who hunted me 1,000 years ago will be wiped out. Changchun slowly turned around and glanced at Yu Qianqiu. I will bathe the entire god world in blood. You killed his grandson. From today onwards, there's already a death grudge will no longer need the 6 great races. Leaving him alive will be a disaster. The 6 ancient gods will all die. Master will help you get rid of this disaster today. They will use their lives to pay for your years of greed. How embarrassing. From today onwards, rubbed his hands together in embarrassment. Will put an end to everything. He did not expect the old man's temper to be so straightforward. Is begging for mercy under my feet. He had not even asked for help, and the old man was already going to make a move. Could it be that you don't dare to come out and fight felt a great sense of danger. When Yu Qianqiu and the others heard this, situation where he had no confidence in defeating his opponent, he knew that he could not stay here for long. Was a little too arrogant. Just as he was about to quickly escape, he actually wanted to go against the 6 great races led by the 6 ancient from all directions. He even said that he wanted to bathe the entire god world in blood. He was too arrogant. Axian exhaled. Knight's undisguised and deliberate heavy as immediately shocked the entire god realm. Each step left and the curtains of a bloody battle were drawn. After that, we found out that the current knight was no longer the same with great difficulty. His demonic arts could be said to be omnipotent, the more dangerous it felt. He waited for the experts of the god world to gather at the place for the other party to suppress him. He did not run or avoid when he saw the other party standing with his hands behind his back, he slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people from the 6 clans. The other party really did have the strength to kill him like a mountain. He immediately stood at the peak of that mountain of corpses and sea of blood. I have no grievances with you. There was Qingyang, who was neither human nor ghost, screaming miserably day swords in one sword drawing style. Yu Qianqiu and the others were speechless. Gaze fell on his hands that were about to pull out the sword, scene at that time, and he gave an irrelevant answer. How tall would it be when the corpses of hundreds of thousands of people were piled up? If you don't pull out your sword now, you won't have another chance. The experts of the 6 clans were killed to the point that they did not dare to come close. Yu Qianqiu, who was behind by no longer needed anyone to confer him the title of demon god. He was prepared to leave if anything went wrong. At the peak of the mountain of corpses and sea of blood without anyone daring to touch him was enough to make his name resound throughout the god world. So he shouted in shock and anger, sword drawing style. Just as he said, No one was qualified to
confer him the title
of God. A dazzling bright light instantly shot out from his sleeve. The 6 ancient gods never thought that the current night instantly would illuminated the world, and the startling light effortlessly broke through the personally huge pressure around him. No one would be able to deal with this great evil. Like a delicate heavenly dragon, the incomparably domineering light was the first to with a whistling sound, as if it wanted to break the world apart. Regardless of whether he had feelings for almost at the same time, the green robe that was about to be engulfed by the shocking light seemed to be blown by a breeze, day and night. It was no different from the brilliance of the stars and the moon and the night sky. He had no choice but to save him. Like a huge disc blocking in front of his skinny body. The ancient god of light finally took action. Shin Yu, who was about to flash into the boundary barrier, was dead for sure this time, who was about to flash into everyone's jaws dropped, were stunned at the same time. The ancient god of light was actually forced to flee the domineering power of and luckily managed to escape with his one sword drawing style. Night left the mountain of corpses and sea of blood and chased after the ancient god of light. However, at this moment, although he managed to escape, he barged into the territory of the ancient god of light. The surrounding air seemed to have been sucked out by the huge disc in an instant. He massacred the descendants of the ancient god of light, but the ancient god of light did not dare to show himself to protect his own. The void disc, the title of heaven and god, stood at the peak of the god world. It was abnormally grand and huge, and it rippled with a mysterious luster. The 6 ancient gods could no longer sit still. It blocked the shocking light that seemed to be able to split the world apart. Evil. The two of them originally thought that there would be an earth-shattering sound when the others might have been intimidated by the demon god's methods resulted in silence. However, the demon god had already spread the word that he wanted to deal with everyone in the 6 ancient gods. Suddenly, he wanted to massacre them all, and his hand slid out from under his beard. With the cooperation of the ancient god of light, he stretched out his hand toward the huge disc working together to fight the enemy. The indomitable disc was immediately pushed forward by the demon god and began to rotate slaughtering people in the god world. It seemed to be rotating with great difficulty under the immense pressure, and took the battle head on. A fierce battle that changed the color of the sky and made the sun like a vitreous of their light made the entire god world tremble. He raised his hand in a very natural manner and swallowed with fingers towards the sky towards the huge disc that was vibrated as he said, "What happened in the end?" A ray of light zigzagged across the huge disc, as if it was going to split the huge disc into 2 from the center. 2 were killed and 4 were injured. Light and shadow, the demon god himself was also seriously injured. In the blink of an eye, however, half the remaining 4 and the other half black, including the ancient god of light and young fish chased by the demon god all over the god world. The entire disc immediately rotated faster, god would not stirring stop up the shocking light that was pressing against the huge disc. Wherever he went, he would kill anyone. Although this exchange of blows seemed slow, his ferocity was actually completed in the time of a single breath. In the end, the 4 ancient gods who could no longer fight were forced to flee into the territories of the coiling dragon god and the phoenix god that were chasing to seek help. The huge disc was exactly the same as the Tai Chi diagram any battles in his previous life. However, after the demon god chased them into the territories of the 2 ancient gods, no one knew what was happening and his eyes widened. When the demon god came out again, the 4 ancient gods also came out with their tails between their legs. The 5 of them went their separate ways. That was the 3-in-1 sword drawing style of the Heartless Palace that instantly destroyed half of Twilight City. Some people guessed that the coiling dragon god and the phoenix god joined forces yet the 4 ancient gods to suppress the demon god. Bai Changchun let out a sonorous chant. Others said that it was the mysterious Tao. As his green robe the battle between the 5 of them. He pressed one of his palms towards the huge disc. None of the people involved were willing to mention this matter. The indomitable Tai Chi disc shrank rapidly. In short, no matter what the truth is, the demon god had already become the #1 expert in the god world and everyone's hearts by defeating 6 ancient Tai Chi disc merged with the shocking light and became the size of a wash basin. 1067. It absorbed and rotated in by 3 of them's outstretched palm. Although the originally dazzling light had shrunk, it had become gentle. He couldn't help but think of the pair of cold and ruthless eyes he saw illuminating by Changchun's green robe particularly clearly. When he thought that Yan Zhuixing had such a powerful that the condensed ball of light in his palm was filled with a terrifying power that made one's heart palpitate. He didn't know whether it would be a blessing or a disaster sword drawing style of the Heartless Palace. How did it end up like this? As his green robe fluttered slightly, pointed at the graves on both sides, one hand especially the grave of the moon god, to absorb the light ball. I can understand that Tai Zhuixing died a long time ago. That's all there is to it. Could it be that the moon god also participated in the battle against the demon god? Grey Cloud Xian's expression changed drastically across Grandma Yan's face. He thought that the other party would use his powerful cultivation after the demon god forcefully break his ancient drawing style. He came to the moon palace that someone would be able to silently and gently absorb the power of his sword drawing style calling just a wave of his hand. His expression changed drastically. How could the great power that had already been released be absorbed by someone else again? Make a dead fetus become a ghost fetus. It was so easily caught in his hand. He thought that it was a child he could actually catch the energy released by someone else with his bare hands. So he immediately questioned Dark. This was a great amount of released energy. In order to anger him, it wasn't a physical object, that it was a child so how was she had with another man. Grey Cloud Xian's face she was also afraid that he wouldn't let go of the child. Only after then did he know that the other party's strength far surpassed his. The demon god knight and he was so angry that he laughed. Fortunately, the great pressure that restricted his movements had already been broken by his sword-drawing style. Then he asked which man's bastard child was it. That Grey Cloud Xian had instantly vanished. Didn't answer. His eyes immediately locked on the man standing beside her. The further the better. Who was my husband, the moon god. Grey Cloud Xian fled in a flash. He thought that my husband was the man who had an affair with Dark. Before he could move, Bai Changchun seemed to have already predicted what he would do. Just think. How could my husband be a match for him? I said that you're someone who's about to die. He died in his hands unjustly. Do you still want to run? Even if we wanted to save him, the ball of light we couldn't do it in time. Suddenly stopped spinning. Until the demon god knight also wanted to kill Xian immediately showed signs of expanding and exploding. But to tell him about Xian girl's identity. Bai Changchun's palm pierced through the expanding ball of light. He should kill them at an extremely fast speed. I don't know why. As it moved in and out, the demon god knight knew that Xian girl was Shang's daughter. He didn't kill her. Almost instantly. Countless dazzling light beams shot out from the ball of light like a violent storm. After that, Dark kept apologizing to me. They shot out densely like apologizing, and the sharp sound of them tearing through the air rang out incessantly, saying that the mausoleum of the god of sin, where only gods mumbled with his mouth would be opened. This was the third time he had seen his master be buried in the mausoleum of the god of sin. He had never seen anyone survive this move. To stay with my man in the mausoleum of the god of sin Grey Cloud Xian had already teleported and disappeared from where he was. She entrusted Xian and Taishu Zhang's bodies to me and asked me to bring them to the mausoleum of the god of sin together. Shot out. She said that she would give her man and my man an explanation. He was already riddled with holes by the countless dazzling light beams. I hated her at that time, and he was devoured in the blink of an eye. My man died because of her. Following his miserable cries, his figure could no longer be seen. After I accepted Xian and Taishu Zhang's corpses, all that could be seen was a dense meteor shower shooting into the starry night sky and my man. After the energy of the expanding ball of light was vented, self-destruct in front of the demon god palm and pressed down intending to perish together with the demon god. The ball of light was sucked back into his palm and started spinning again. Completely woke me up from my hatred. However, its size had shrunk by half. The demon god knight's demonic power was too strong. Who were still standing dumbfounded and did not cause any damage to suddenly saw Bai Changchun after the smoke dissipated, the demon god knight knelt at the place where Dark had self-destructed and entered the barrier of heavens behind them. He was bleeding from his 7 apertures and turned around dumbfoundedly with their mouths wide open. It was almost unbearable to look at. They saw the ball of light distort the moment for the demon god knight to leave. Then take Xian to the place where her mother died by an invisible energy and silently disappeared without a trace. I would take her away to the mausoleum of the god of sin. Such a powerful energy disappeared just like that. Unexpectedly, the two of them slowly turned around there and howled for more than 3 days and 3 nights. They felt their throats go dry and they didn't know what to say. I was afraid that he would cause trouble for Xian when he woke up, so I took her to the mausoleum of the god of sin. The scene of him being riddled with holes still appeared in their minds. It was not until the mausoleum of the god of sin was sealed again that I felt relieved. Grey Cloud Xian's miserable cries seemed to still echo in their ears. For so many years, Grey Cloud Xian, guarding the mausoleum, who was a middle-stage immortal emperor, who would have thought that Xian would keep asking me about her parents after she grew up. The two of them stole another glance at each other, as if they couldn't hide it from her for the rest of her life. Shin Yu's expression was a little ugly. After she kept asking me, he didn't dare to look straight at she would not be able to leave this place anyway. Worry and hesitation appeared in his eyes. However, not even in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that she would predict that there would come a time when the barrier of heavens would be lenient. He didn't think he had any chance of escaping. She left behind a jade archive, old song, saying that she wanted to avenge her parents. I didn't expect him to make a move so quickly. She quietly left. I didn't even have the chance to say goodbye to you. After listening to this dispute involving the high and mighty huge Tai Chi diagram fell silent. He flashed to Bai Changchun inside and asked with an embarrassed smile, even though the demon god was infamous for killing countless innocent people, may I know the name of Master's only one at fault? I don't know. Time flew by like a fleeting cloud. It doesn't have a name yet. The countless joys and sorrows brought about by the dispute between the gods might just be the beginning of a never-ending process. Behind his back again, as if nothing had happened. Feel guilty. Now, she looked up at the darkness on the other side of the cliff and said, "This is a new power manipulation method that I comprehended in the barrier of heavens. To put it bluntly, I'm afraid that she doesn't even have the chance to come into contact with the demon god. It's mysterious and profound. How can she seek revenge? I still need to continue to comprehend and comforted her." Knowing that these grudges would not affect by Suzhen's cultivation of the myriad demons Heart Sutra, he felt a lot more at ease. Yu Qianqiu was speechless for a while. After listening to these grudges that involved the heavenly realm, old man was he also felt that there was no meaning in fighting and killing. He could easily comprehend some kind of cultivation path that could never be turned back. How could others who cultivated the same way as him endure it, especially if one did not actively prepare for it? One might suffer unbearable pain in the future. Seemed to have a complete system. One could only continue on this path. There was no way to avoid it. Unfortunately, he was not an all-rounder who knew everything about astronomy and geography, and no one can be certain. He did not know much about this mysterious thing. Grandma Yan looked at Yu Qianqiu with a gentle gaze and really make up a few things to make the old man everything that needs to be said. Is there anything else? Since you and Xian are close friends, Changchun suddenly looked at him and asked lightly, "Help me persuade her to come back after you leave this place." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. What a joke. He heard a hint of, "Don't disturb me if there's nothing else," from his master's words. How am I qualified to persuade her? His lips moved as if he wanted to say something. I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to even see her. He still bowed and said, Yu Qianqiu coughed awkwardly and said, "Disciple is relieved. In my opinion, disciple still has something to deal with, so I won't disturb master. If she wants to come back, she will naturally come expressionlessly. If she doesn't want to come back again, even if you catch her and bring her back." Then, he slowly took a few steps back he looked at Yu and continued, "Unless you keep an eye on her all the time, stole a glance she will still find a way to get out." He saw that Bai Changchun was still standing with his hands behind his back after hearing his looking up at the starry sky. He could enter and exit the barrier of fluttered in the night wind. If Grandma Yu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a panicked expression, would she kill him to stop He did not know what he wanted to do. This place again. Yu Qianqiu looked at him with a smile and said, Grandma Yan nodded slightly and said, "I always keep my word. Maybe when she is really tired to help you remove the restriction in your body, come back. So naturally, I will do it. Otherwise, if her heart is relax outside, your body. Even if I forcibly catch her back, was surprised it will be no different from torture to her." He looked at him in disbelief. A person who cannot calm down will not be able to stay here if what he said was true or not. Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief and cupped his hands as promised. Don't worry, however, Grandma, it was not up to him whether he believed it or not. I will definitely tell her that he could only do as he was told and relax his body nervously. He was about to bid farewell. Open your mouth. Grandma Yan smiled and nodded. Yu Qianqiu let out a low growl. Okay. His 5 fingers grabbing towards Shen Yu's mouth. I hope you can find the person you were looking for. The bead in his body rushing towards his throat. Yu Qianqiu quickly opened his mouth to the flying and a green light shot out. Gray cloud Yu Qianqiu's hand also bowed and his fist was hidden in his sleeve. Then, under Grandma Yan's overjoyed smile, the flying shuttle flew away and confirmed that the flying shuttle had been southward under the bright moonlight. The stone in his heart immediately fell to the ground. The gazes of the 3 people swept across the vast land and didn't know what to say. Were buried. After a while, he said incoherently, "Their minds could not help but return to the grudges of the gods that Grandma Yan had told them. I have my own way to leave, they felt so but I want you to promise me something else." After a long time, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed at the all-heavens boundary outside the cliff. "Do you know where that old Meng is? Every year on this day, I don't know. You have to wait for me at the river Styx at the border between the endless horizon and here for a day. Most of the tombs here are buried in the center of the cemetery. If I still don't come after a day, you have to come back. There are very few people like Granny Yan who have their tombs buried close to the celestial boundary formation. If I see a tomb along the way to the south, also peeked at it should be the tomb of Old Meng. Although the restriction in his body had been removed, why didn't you say he had no choice but to agree? If I knew you didn't his master could enter and exit the all-heavens boundary at will. Yu Qianqiu said gloomily. He had completely lost his defensive advantage. The consequences of not agreeing could be a lot of secrets. He nodded awkwardly. Gray Cloud suddenly spoke. I understand. He turned back to look at Yu Qianqiu and sneered. I will wait for you at the river Styx at the border between the endless horizon and here for a day. What I'm curious about is, when have you seen the underworld saintess? I refuse to answer. Don't blame me for using you. Yu Qianqiu retorted without hesitation. You have to know that you provoked me first. Gray Cloud choked and was speechless. If it wasn't for my help, little did he know that Yu Qianqiu was already thinking about how he knew too many secrets. We are even now. Because he had killed his grandson, It was impossible for him to reconcile
from
with
for
him.
150,000
Therefore,
years.
he was thinking about how
I'm
to
glad
get rid
to
of
have
him.
met you in the netherworld this time.
After flying in silence for
We
a
will
whole
meet
day,
again if fate
the three of them
allows.
stood on the flying shuttle
should go
and
back
stared
now.
in 3 different directions.
Goodbye.
Suddenly,
Then,
there was a
he
loud
smiled and
boom
cupped his
in front of
fists at
them.
Shinyu.
They could feel the
Then,
ground
he
shaking
turned
in the
around
air.
and bowed to Bai Changchun.
There were experts
who was
fighting.
standing under the moonlight with
The
his hands
flying
behind
shuttle
his
suddenly
back.
stopped. Just as
The
Shinyu
three
cupped
of them
his
looked
fists
at
to
each other
return the
and
greeting,
suddenly heard
he
someone
realized
shouting
that
angrily in the
Yu Qianzhou had
distance.
disappeared without a trace.
Old thief. There was no fluctuation in the air around him.
Yu
He had
Qianzhou's
no
eyelids
idea where Yu
twitched and he
Qianzhou
said
had
in a deep
gone.
voice, "Let's go."
Did he really leave?
Let's go and take a
Shinyu
look.
was stunned.
The other two
Then,
also
he
vaguely
became a
guessed
little
something.
excited.
Grey
With
Cloud
Yu
Axian's
Qianzhou's
departure
departure
and
for
the
a
words
while,
he said
but he
before he
still
left,
drove the flying
the
shuttle
resentment
in
that
the
had
direction of the
accumulated in his
battle.
heart disappeared instantly.
Not long after,
The
three
thinking
of them
about it
saw
carefully,
that under the
Yu
silvery
Qianzhou
moonlight,
did not owe
there
him
were
anything.
huge potholes everywhere.
He even brought him back to
in
the
front
home
of them,
that he had been
there was
away
a
from
hill
for
that was
150,000
miraculously preserved.
years. They could
Seriously
vaguely see a
speaking,
tomb that was
he should be
exactly the
thanking him.
same as the
Shinyu
one they
took a
saw
deep
at Grandma
breath.
Yan's. The shackles
At the
that had
top
been
of
on
the
him all
hill,
these years
there
had
was a
finally
stone
been
house
removed.
built on the slope.
He could be free
Although
again.
it was simple, it was
His
slightly
gaze
more
fell on the
majestic
skinny
than
old
Grandma
man in a
Yan's
green
stone
robe.
house.
He bowed
Apart from the
respectfully
hill,
to Yao Yao
the surrounding
in silence.
areas had indeed been destroyed
Then,
to the point
he
of being
turned into a stream of
unrecognizable.
light and flew away without
Grey
any
Cloud
worries or
Axian
fear.
drove the flying
After he
shuttle and
disappeared into
maintained
the
the distance,
not
by
daring
Changchun,
to approach,
who was standing with his hands
What a
behind his
joke.
back and looking at the stars.
They did not know this
suddenly
person.
looked outside the celestial
Moreover,
boundary.
the angry shout
His
just
eyes
now was
flickered
filled
and he
with sparks
snorted
of
coldly.
gunpowder.
How
The
dare
other
you
party
treat
was
my
so
disciple
angry.
as a
How
performer
could they
and sing for
trespass on
you?
his territory?
How majestic
May
of
I
an
ask
emperor.
if this is Senior Meng's residence?
Just change the wedding ceremony
Yu
to a
Qianzhou
funeral
shouted in the
ceremony.
direction of the hill.
As soon as he finished
In
speaking,
the end,
there was
flicked his
no
sleeve and
response
turned
even
into
after
a stream
shouting
of
a
light
few
that
times.
flew away quickly.
The three of them
He was
looked
heading
at each
in the
other and
direction of
reckoned that
Old
the person
Mang.
should have left. The sun was shining
Perhaps
brightly
he
in
went
Utopia.
to chase after someone.
Weeds and
At
wildflowers
this moment,
clustered
a stream
beside
of
the
light
gurgling
appeared in
stream.
front of them in the blink of an eye.
On a small mountain surrounded
The
by the
speed was
stream,
so fast
Yu
that it
Qianzhou
gave the
stretched
three
out
of
his
them a
hand to
fright.
block the glaring sunlight.
A grey-robed old man
After
with his
staying
hair
in the
tied
dark
up in a
netherworld
slanted
for a
bun
long
appeared.
time,
He really could
he
not
looked at the
adapt
three
to
of
the
them
sunlight.
angrily and asked with a choking
After
voice,
a while,
"Who are you?"
he put down his hand and
Why
looked
did you
around at the lush
trespass here?
greenery at the foot of the mountain.
It was so good to
Chapter
take a breath of fresh
1068.
air. Seeing that the other party's hair
He
was
could
crooked
not help
from
but
anger,
sigh.
the three of them looked at each other.
Humans and ghosts are indeed
They were
different.
almost certain that this was old
People
man
should
Meng,
stay where they
who was
are.
annoyed by the harassment.
After saying that,
Yu
he
Qianzhou
closed his
cupped
eyes
his hands
again.
and said, "May I ask
After a
if you were
moment of
Senior Meng?"
silence,
He slowly shook
seeing
his
that
head
the other
and
party
opened his
actually
eyes.
knew who he was,
He
the
found
old
that
man's
he had
angry
indeed
expression
completely
eased
lost
a little,
contact
and
with
he
the
said
tomb
in
of
a
the
deep
god of
voice,
sin.
"That's me."
Not only could he not
What's the
find Bai
matter?
Changchun, but
Yu
the silver
Qianzhou's
ball that
eyes
he
lit
had
up,
thrown
and he
inside did
chuckled
not
and said,
respond at all.
"We were introduced by Grandma
He did not
Yan
know
from the
what
north.
trick there was in the tomb of the
We
god
heard
of
that
sin to be
Senior
able
Meng
to
encountered
isolate
some
the
trouble,
outside world.
so Grandma Yan asked us
It was
to come and
impossible
see if
to
there's
enter
anything
and
we can
exit the
help
tomb
with.
of the god of sin at
Grandma
any time.
Yan introduced you.
Fortunately,
Old
he
man
had made
Meng was
preparations
stunned,
in advance,
and he
immediately checked the cultivation
He made an
of the
agreement
three
with
of them.
Shinyu once a year.
As a
So he had
result,
the opportunity
the corner
to
of his
enter and
mouth
exit
curled
the
up
tomb
into
of
a
the god of
disdainful
sin.
sneer, as if to
It was
say,
unknown what he
"How
thought
could the
of,
three of them
but
be
after
of any help
shaking
with their
his head,
cultivation?"
he disappeared again.
He took out
The
a
sky
jade
was
talisman,
high and the sky
and after
was
entering a
wide.
spell into it,
At the
he
peak of
crushed
the
the
love
jade
mound that
talisman
suddenly
into powder.
emerged from the sea of clouds.
The three of them
May he,
understood that the
whose
other party
clothes
was
were fluttering in
obviously
the
doubting
wind,
the
held both
authenticity
of
of
his
their
hands
identity,
with a gloomy
and he might
expression.
even be verifying it with
There was a
Grandma
broken
Yan.
nameplate in his hands.
The three of them could not help
The
but
owner
feel
of this
lucky that they
nameplate
had
was
a great
Grey Cloud
relationship with
Axian,
Grandma Yan, and it
the
should
breaking
not
of the
ruin their
nameplate
business.
meant that the owner had died.
After a while, old
Opposite
man Meng
him was the
looked at the
tall
three
and
of them
thin
and
Wang
nodded
Qi.
slightly.
All right.
His wide blue robe
I'm
was
annoyed
fluttering
by
by
that
that
old
old
thief.
and his long hair,
The
which was
three
not
of you can
tied
act
up,
as hidden
fluttered
sentries at
behind
the
him.
edge of the all heavens
The
boundary.
eyes and the two holes of the
When you
silver
see
mask
him,
were cold.
immediately send me a message.
He stared
lest I lose
motionlessly
sight
at the
of him.
nameplate in Meihi's hand.
As he spoke,
he took
no
out
one
another
could see
three
what
jade
expression he had
talismans
on his
and flicked them
face.
into
into the hands of the three of them. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound not far away. Yu Qianqiu put away the jade talismans that the wind that swept back and then asked on the mountain peak had solidified. I heard from Grandma Yen that that person saw that the sixth dragon snow blue, which was originally restrained, was now overflowing with light. Why does he want to rob the tomb? The huge sword that was half inserted into the mountain peak was slowly being pulled out by itself. At the mention of this, Old Man Meng's face suddenly collapsed, of his honored master, and he said with a hideous expression, "Thinking about it, I've met the only one in the Heartless Palace who could use the 3-in-1 sword drawing style was the High Priest. Later on, I understood that he was using me to practice and improve his cultivation to the Heartless Palace. Every time I chased him away, I found that his cultivation had increased a little when I fought him again. Original position. The speed at which his cultivation increased was monstrous, and the wind swept back and forth on the mountain peak again. I'll sooner or later be defeated by him. He raised his head slightly to look at his honored master. I must seize the opportunity to eliminate him before he becomes powerful. Otherwise, I'll definitely be humiliated one day. It's truly he said in an indifferent voice, I will go down the mountain to attend Jintai's wedding ceremony old man in a few days. Style. Before that, I don't want to be distracted. He smiled awkwardly and said, that your eldest and senior brother has died. Why did you still fight with him? Take the opportunity to find out the cause of his death to deceive others. He won't have the chance to improve his cultivation. You will personally lead people to the netherworld and take the core forces of the Heartless Palace away in batches. If I liked fighting and killing, would I have come to the mausoleum of the god of sin to guard the tomb? There will naturally be people who will receive you. The key is that if I don't fight with him, that madman will really dig up the tomb. May his waist straightened. Even if I can watch him dig up the tomb and not do anything. If you don't fight with him, how was this investigating the cause of eldest senior brother's death? Am I supposed to just stand there and let him secretly transferring the forces of the Heartless Palace to the netherworld? Could even though he was a few meters away, about to ask his spittle was almost splattered all over the faces of the three slightly and stop him from asking any more questions. The bun on the back of his head swayed back and forth. His indifferent voice continued to be ethereal. It seemed like he was about to break it down from the torture and can still survive. After spitting, I will immediately go to the netherworld realized that there was no need to lose his temper. If I am lucky enough to win against Jintai, he waved his hand and pointed in the direction of the all heavens boundary. If I die, saying the disciples of the Heartless Palace will be under the edge of the all heavens boundary. If you have the chance to take revenge once you find that green-robed old then do it. Immediately send a message to me. Then forget it. Okay. Don't ask any more questions. We'll go now. There are some things that you will naturally know when the time comes. And Sungin Axayan immediately flew in the direction of the all heavens boundary on the flying shuttle. Unpredictably. The huge moon hung high for a moment before bowing, and the bright moonlight shone on the earth as tranquil as water. Then he turned into a stream of light and entered the undulating sea of clouds on the mountainside. In a hidden valley outside the hallucinatory immortal city, Yu Qiancho's head suddenly popped out from a corner of the mountain wall. Take care of that person. He looked left and right to make sure there was no one around before popping out. Even with old man Meng's cultivation, he originally wanted to teleport back to the World Chamber of Commerce. He's not someone we can afford to provoke. But he thought that he had stayed in the netherworld for such a long time. Shin Yu nodded in agreement. If no one saw him return, it would raise suspicion, not provoking him. Some things had to be explained, such as Song Yunshin's death. Finding old man Meng first was just as he popped out of the mountain wall and tidied up his clothes. Now that we have a way, we'll leave this place immediately after we find that person. It was a familiar feeling. We won't meet old man Meng again. He then wrinkled his nose, so there's no need to worry too much. Sniffing around with a puzzled expression. But I still have to stay here in the future. Just as he walked out of the crevice in the mountain, weakly, he suddenly heard someone shouting in the air. He had no human rights. And no one responded to his words. Looked up and saw three streams of light had already landed on the other side of the mountain slope, who was standing silently on the flying shuttle. Clearly what was happening surroundings from time to time. He heard a clear and melodious voice of a woman saying in a panic, strange about the mausoleum of the god of sin that could block his ability to sense the silver balls and an unusually familiar dialogue. Little girl. He was sure that I don't think you're a disciple of any famous sect based on your clothes with him and had been brought into the boundary formation. You're sneakily hiding here and there by yourself. Otherwise, he would have sensed the silver balls. Did you do something shameful? If he could sense their whereabouts, answered with a lewd laugh, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Stop obediently and let us examine you properly. The three of them finally arrived in front of the cliff. It was you who chased me. On one side, that's why I was stars and moon shone brightly on the earth. The woman who spoke suddenly screamed, on the other side, don't come over. It was completely dark. Otherwise, in the darkness ahead was the boundary formation that was filled with an inexplicable power. After putting away the flying shuttle, Yu Qiancho pointed to the left and right and said, why are the ruffians in the immortal world find a place to wait on the left, still stuck in the ancient times? Shin Yu, find a place to wait on the right. Looked back in the direction of the hallucinatory immortal city. When you see him, looked in the direction of the lewd laughter. Sungin Axayan was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Should he go back to do his own things, are you kidding me? For justice and eradicate evil? Who do you think he is? What if he encountered a tough guy and was beaten up just because we say so? His nose flapped again as he slapped his forehead and smiled, faintly evoking memories. He's not as easy to talk to as I am. If you dare to make irresponsible remarks in front of him, you'll definitely suffer. Once he landed on the hill, he immediately saw three men surrounding a green-clothed little girl. He didn't
When he
guess
hears
wrong.
you shout my
It was the
name,
little girl
he'll
called
naturally come to you to
Lucine,
ask
who
what's
followed
going
an old
on.
man to sell things
There
in the
shouldn't be a problem if you
hallucinatory
bring him
city.
here.
At the very
sized
least,
up the
he'll
three
give you
men
time
and
to
found
send a
that he
message
couldn't
to
see
me
through
and
their
wait for me to
cultivation.
find him. Their
At the very
cultivation was
least,
clearly
if you
higher
say
than
my
his,
name,
and
at
their
least he
clothes
won't
were
hurt
also
you.
somewhat familiar.
Sanyan Aksayan
They
and
seemed
Shinyu
to be
looked at each
disciples
other.
of some large sect.
The former asked suspiciously,
He couldn't help but
"What's the
frown.
use of saying your name?"
As expected,
Is
those
this
who
for
dared
real?
to do this kind of thing
Are
in the
you
open had
familiar
a
with him?
background. Don't
The
ask
moment he
anymore.
landed,
The three men
you'll
below
know the result
also
when the
noticed the
time
movement
comes.
and looked up.
Yu Qianqiu
When they
waved
saw
his
that it was
hand
Yu
and said,
Qianqiu,
"Go quickly."
their expressions changed slightly.
If you missed the chance to meet him,
how could it be
the
him?
immortal emperor's wedding is
A
not
person's
far
reputation
away.
was like a tree's
We
shadow.
don't have time to delay anymore.
Who didn't know the world commerce's
After a moment of
master,
hesitation,
Yu Qianqiu.
the two of them split up
Moreover,
and flew in different
these
directions.
three people
Doubtfully.
had seen Yu Qianqiu with their
Yu
own
Qianqiu
eyes.
stood alone in the same
Although
spot,
Yu Qianqiu
rubbing his
didn't know
hands
them,
excitedly.
they knew that no matter how
He
strong
looked
their
up at the big
background
moon
was,
in the sky
this
and
person
hoped that
couldn't
he
be
could pull
provoked.
by Changchun to the immortal
At least
world
for
to
now,
support him.
this person
3
was
days
carrying
passed
the
by
immortal
unwittingly
emperor's
in the midst
decree
of
and
waiting.
could do whatever he wanted.
In a desolate stone
The
forest,
green-clothed little
Shinyu
girl
carefully
looked up,
hid in
and
it
her
and
eyes
silently
immediately
observed his
lit up as
surroundings.
if she had met her savior.
Suddenly,
She
saw the
shouted,
air and the
"Yu
all-heavens
Qianqiu,
boundary ripple
save
like
me."
water in front of him.
Ah.
A thin old man
This
in a
girl's
green
memory
robe
was
broke
really
through the
good.
rippling air and slid out
I
of the
forgot what your
all-heavens
name
boundary
was,
like he was
but you
standing on
still
the bow of a
remembered my
ship
name.
riding the wind and waves.
Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched.
The thin but spirited old man
was
in a
too
green
embarrassed
robe
to
floated
ignore
under
it
the
now.
stars and moon.
He
His
raised
eyes
his
shining
brows and
brightly as he
stared at
looked
the three
around.
people below with a sneer.
Shinyu immediately guessed
The
that
three
this
of
was
you
the
are
person
really
Yu
in a good
Qianqiu
mood.
wanted him to find.
This Yu is interested
However,
to see what
when
the
he
three
saw
of you
this
want to
person,
do.
his heart couldn't help
Continue.
but tremble.
This you probably won't
This
disturb
person's
you.
eyes were filled with an
What do you
indomitable
mean
sharpness.
I probably won't disturb you?
That skinny yet
The
sonorous
trio's
aura made it
expressions
seem as
changed
if this
again.
person could rip him apart.
One
with
of them
just his
politely
gaze.
cupped his hands and said,
His
"So it's
intuition
sect
from many
leader Yu.
years of hiding told him
We
that this
greet
person
you."
was very dangerous.
The other two hurriedly
Therefore,
followed suit and
he
bowed.
threw Yu Qianqiu's instructions
The
to
man
the
then
back of his
pointed to the
mind and
green-clothed
subconsciously
girl and
wanted
said,
to hide first.
"We saw her acting suspiciously
His head
and were
shrank
just about
slightly
to
and his
question
body
her.
hunched, trying to
Since
hide
sect
behind the
master
rugged
Yu is
stone
here,
pillar. I believe she won't be
As
able
for
to
what
cause
would
any
happen
trouble.
next, he would think about
Let's
it
hand
later."
her over to sect master
He
Yu to
didn't want to
handle.
take any life-threatening
The
risks.
other two nodded in agreement.
However,
They knew how to
before
conduct
half of his
themselves.
head could completely hide
They
behind
had
the
the
stone
taste of
pillar.
letting you
His
taste the
clothes
soup of this
lightly
little
brushed
beauty
against the
first.
protruding stone.
One of his eyes,
Did he
which
really
had not
think that
hidden
all the
behind
men
the
in the
stone
world were
pillar in
black?
time, immediately
Don't you
saw
know
the
what it
other
means
party
to be
suddenly
lecherous?
staring at him.
Yu
The
Qianqiu's
divine
face
gaze
darkened
was like
immediately.
electricity piercing one's heart.
He said in
and
a
the
low
substantial
voice,
divine
"Bullsh
sense was like the
asterisk
autumn
T.
wind sweeping away the fallen
If you don't
leaves,
scram,
cleanly
I'll
and
chop
neatly
off your
sweeping
dog
through the
heads."
terrain of the entire stone
The trio
forest.
smiled
Shinyu was
flatteringly and
shocked.
immediately ran away with
Without
their tails
saying
between
anything,
their legs.
he wanted to turn around
Yu
and teleport
Qianqiu
away.
looked at the three of them running
However,
away.
just as he was about
He didn't
to turn
fly
around,
into a rage
the air
and
around
chase
him
after
suddenly
them.
froze and a strong
Let's
pressure
not talk
pressed
about
down
whether
on him
he
on
could
the
catch
spot.
up to them or not.
He couldn't move at all.
The key was that he didn't have the
At
mood
this
to
moment,
fly
it was
into a
difficult
rage.
to even move a single
He
step
reckoned
with
that
all
once
his
he
cultivation.
returned, the
let
people
alone
from Heartless
teleport
Palace
away.
would ask him why Grey
He
Cloud
immediately
Xayan
panicked.
died.
It
There
was
was
only
also
at
the
this
matter of
moment
the
that he
immortal
thought of
palace
using
that
Yu
he had to
Qianqiu's
deal
name
with.
to try and save his life.
How could he be in the mood to cause more
However,
trouble?
his lungs were already
Ah.
being squeezed to the point of
Hearing
bursting.
movement,
Let
he
alone
turned around
opening his mouth
cautiously
to speak.
The
Even
green-clothed
his
girl
right to
had already
explain had been
flashed to
taken
the
away in an
hillside.
instant.
Her 10
The
fingers
thin
were
green
rubbing the
robed
edge of
elder
her
slowly
skirt as she
descended
looked at
from
him
the
from a
sky in
distance.
front of him.
Her
He
pure
looked him
eyes
up and
were
down
flickering,
and said
and it was
indifferently,
as if they
"Why
could
are you
speak.
sneaking around here and spying
There
on
seemed
me?"
to be anticipation
As
and
soon
fear
as
in
the
her
elder
eyes.
asked this,
The fragrance
Shinyu
became
immediately
more
found
and
that
more
the strong
alluring.
pressure pressing down
Yu
on his lungs had
Qianqiu took a
disappeared.
deep breath and shook his head
Although
with
he
a
still
smile.
couldn't move, at least
Little
he could
girl,
breathe and speak.
Go home quickly.
He didn't say anything to
Don't
explain
run out
and
alone
panted
in the
as he
future.
said, "Yu Qianqiu."
After saying that,
He
Yu
turned
Qianqiu
around and was about to leave.
It was Yu Qianqiu
He
who
didn't
asked
have
me
the
to
good
wait for
moral
you
character
here.
to send
This
the little
thin
girl
green-robed
home.
elder was none other than
He had
Bai
already
Changchun,
tried his best
who
to
was
help
injured
her.
by the emperor of the underworld
After
and
all,
fled here.
the world had become so
Hearing chaotic.
the other party say Yuchincho's
There were
name
too
as
many
soon as he
people who
opened his
needed
mouth.
help.
Even though he had
The
always
weak
been
were
calm,
prey to the strong.
he couldn't help but be a little surprised.
He was in a precarious situation.
The other party
so he
had
to
said
deal with it
Yuchincho's
carefully.
name 3 times in a row.
How could he care
so
too
he
much?
naturally didn't hear it wrong.
However, The little girl's crisp voice came from behind him. Why Yu Qianqiu would arrange someone here to wait for him. My name is Lu. Wasn't this disciple of his too powerful? Yu Qianqiu stopped in his tracks and scratched his magical power couldn't be connected to this place. He turned around and looked at her in confusion, frowning and thinking as if asking what she meant. He shook his hand in his sleeve, and a small girl immediately said with anticipation, Yu Qianqiu. He nodded slightly thoughtfully. We met in the hallucinatory immortal city. He thought that Yu Qianqiu had found his whereabouts there because of these silver balls. You even couldn't break into the powerful boundary formation of all heavens. So he arranged someone to wait for him. Scratched his head again. Could it be that something had happened didn't understand what the little girl was trying to say? The moment Bai Changqun kept the silver balls in his hands, the strong pressure around him disappeared. He took out a big handful of divine-grade spirit stones from his storage pouch, and his whole body swayed as if he was drunk. He pulled out her hands that were rubbing the hem of her skirt, then pried open her slender fingers and placed the big handful of divine-grade. It was not a good feeling to be almost crushed to the point of exploding. The little girl's pretty and slightly immature face revealed a blank expression as she looked at him and looked up at the other spirit stones in her hands. The other party asked. She also didn't understand what he was trying to say. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu's name could really save his life, turned into a streak of light and shot into the sky, flying in the direction of the hallucinatory immortal city. However, he asked me to wait for you here. He immediately felt someone following him. He said to say his name when I see you, so... When he turned around, he saw the little girl listen to him and interrupted. He's here too. Why did it feel like she was over there? Could it be that they were going the same way? And pointed. He saw a blur in front of him. Brows creased into a frown. His clothes tightened around his waist, figure flashed and the wind whistled from the direction he was flying in. He was dragged away by the other party. The little girl also made a turn in the air and had been staring in the direction of the all-heavens boundary for the past few days. Couldn't take it anymore. Suddenly turned his head to the right and saw a green light whistling floating in the air. When it approached, the little girl threw out a black shadow, she stopped which immediately scared him, her hands still holding the pile of spirit stones. Shen Yu cried out in pain and struggled to get up from the ground. Why are you following me? Then, Yu Qianqiu appeared in front of him and looked at him from head to toe. Yu had a blank expression on her face as if she didn't know anything. He didn't know how he had offended Bai Changqun, the spirit stones causing him to make such an entrance. Your things are with me. However, he didn't have time to think immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He bowed to Bai Changqun and said, it seemed like this little girl was following him because she wanted to return the spirit stones to him. Yu, as expected, she was a naive person who didn't understand the ways of the world. He looked at the two in surprise. It was all his fault for not making things clear. No wonder he smiled bitterly and said, Miss Lu, Bai Changqun nodded and frowned. Are for you. There's no need to return them to me. I heard that Master was injured by Emperor of the Underworld by Qi and escaped here. My grandfather said that people's hearts are sinister. I wanted to see how Master's injuries were. I can't simply take other people's things. This place is very strange. So, I tried my best to find Master. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry what happened after he arrived in the immortal world and how he found this place. You still dare to run around with me. He used voice transmission because Qi was present and some secrets were not convenient to be revealed. Quickly go home and don't follow me anymore. Naturally, but you could tell that the two of them were avoiding him through voice transmission. Said very seriously. He didn't dare to have any opinions. When she heard that the spirit stones stood by the side and didn't say a word, she kept the things in her hands impolitely. After listening to Yu Qianqiu's story, these words were really ironic. Changqun couldn't help but look at Yu Qianqiu in amazement. He didn't expect his disciple to have such an embarrassment and sized up the little girl again. Suddenly, he realized that her cultivation was similar to his, sending chills down Yu's spine. Such a naive little girl with a low cultivation was like a piece of fatty meat wherever she went. He saw Bai Changqun's hand grabbing at the void and letting her run around the air. He then asked so shocked that he screamed, I say, Yu Qianqiu, save me. Where's your house? Master, how can your grandfather feel at ease letting you run around alone? Yu Qianqiu was about to plead for Shen Yu, lowered her head slightly and raised his hand and lifted Shen Yu where my house is. He said I snuck out alone. The power of the all-heavens boundary is not to be underestimated. That I ran out. I can't find my way back. I want to see how this little demon can enter and exit freely. She looked at Yu Qianqiu with eyes filled with anticipation. He waved his hand as if she was saying, "You into the all-heaven boundary formation hundreds of meters away with a whoosh." How could the World Commerce Association casually taken outsiders? His whole body was immediately shrouded in a layer of faint light, which was bright and dazzling, but he couldn't win against the other party's clean and clear eyes. Yu Qianqiu was speechless and dug his ears. After hesitating for a while, it was not easy to reason with this old man. Then what if your grandfather wants to find you but can't find you? Shen Yu tumbled in the all-heavens boundary for a while. After he stabilized his body, he quickly shook her head repeatedly and said, "Once if grandfather discovers that I'm not shrouding his body immediately still in the immortal realm, he can find me anytime he wants." He admitted that he did not have that ability, but he did not dare to approach such an ability. That old monster in green robe wouldn't it have the same effect as the other party was too strong. If he wanted to make a move, filled with suspicion, he would not be able to resist at all. Since it's like this, then follow me first. He was completely like a toy in the other party's hands. When your grandfather finds you, then you can go home with your grandfather. He stood weakly on the edge of the cliff. After saying that, he did not dare to feeling of abducting nor did he have the guts to approach. And it's really amazing. Lu'er nodded her head repeatedly to be someone here who is not restricted by the all heavens boundary. This unlucky girl who stared at Xinyu in the distance and exclaimed slightly. Rolled his eyes at her. Then he turned around and follow asked, me. Where is that sung something? His figure flashed and flew towards the direction of the illusory three swords in one sword drawing style can dominate both the immortal and netherworld realms. The sea of clouds in front of them was filled with flowing lights of all colors. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. The two of them also entered the sea of clouds one after the other. Quickly crushed it to send a message. Here, Yu Qianzhou deliberately slowed down the scene of Song to let others have a chance to see that he had returned. It would take some time for Song and Exan to come back. His return was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. Did not waste time immediately causing a commotion in the illusory immortal city. On the rooftop of the World Commerce about the devil god from another Luan and Wei Chuanqiu were excitedly surrounding Yunpeng and talking about something. He relayed the story that Grandma Yan with a young lady. Their expressions froze, and they looked at his master, who was determined to fight with the devil god. Would be careful. Moved behind Yu Qianzhou. That was a real heaven's favored one. Yu Qianzhou looked if there was a chance to meet him, he must not underestimate him. Before he landed, he clearly saw that the three of them were filled with excitement and didn't know what good thing had muttered in a low voice. The three of them didn't ask about his return. His green robe fluttered even though there was no wind. Instead, but his eyes shone brighter and brighter, who lifted her chin towards the uncontrollable passion and said with a frown, Yu Qianzhou seemed to feel a raging fire suddenly igniting in his skinny chest, eyes burning fiercely. He faintly felt that he had seen this young lady somewhere before. Even the 6 ancient gods were not his match. I picked her up on the road. Let me make arrangements for her first before coming back to talk. The green robe on his body slowly turned around and waved at his emotions, leading her down quickly. He raised his head and looked at the big moon in the sky. He could faintly hear the sound of mahjong tiles being shuffled. It seems that I still have a long way to go. To a door, Yu Qianzhou pushed open the door the number one expert in the divine realm as soon as possible. The women were all here. For fighting bitterly and one watching. He really didn't know where they got their patience from to never get tired of playing. Actually, he had wronged them. They didn't know that no matter how fun it was, it couldn't withstand playing it day after day. This mahjong tile that didn't have any stakes had long lost its initial passion. The women usually cultivated in their own rooms. Coincidentally, Ze pulled them over to play today on a whim and coincidentally bumped into them when he came back. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the women turned around and were instantly pleasantly surprised. Those who were sitting all stood up. Ze even pushed the mahjong tiles away with a crash and exclaimed excitedly, "Big liar. You're back." Chapter 1073. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou's smiling face immediately sunk. He came back happily, but he couldn't seem to be happy when he met this woman. She made a fuss in front of everyone and didn't know what it meant to give others face. Yu Qianzhou gave her a dark look and moved to the side, making way for Lu'er behind him. The little girl looked curiously and timidly at the beautiful sisters in the room. The women looked at each other with complicated expressions. Wah. I didn't say anything wrong, right? Ze jumped out and turned to face her sisters. She pointed at Yu Qianzhou at the door and shouted, "I said he was going to bring another one back for you." Turning around, she faced Yu Qianzhou with a face full of anger and said, "I didn't think you wouldn't even let off such a young girl. Are you done?" Yu Qianzhou looked at her coldly and snorted, "None of your business. You're shameless." Ze scolded with a flushed face. Yu Qianzhou couldn't be bothered with her and nodded at Yanyu. Yanyu walked over and squeezed out a smile, saying, "You're back." Yu Qianzhou pointed at Lu'er and said, "She's called Lu'er." On the way back, I happened to see her being bullied by a few men, so I saved her. I saw that she didn't know the ways of the world and was afraid that she would encounter some danger, so I brought her back first. When the time comes, her grandfather will come to find her. You look after her first. Don't let her run around the World Commerce Association. Once these words were said, the women immediately understood. So it was like this. It wasn't what everyone thought at all. The furious Ze immediately became incomparably embarrassed. Her mouth pouted a few times and she lost her temper. Yu Chincho's gaze swept across the few women and coincidentally met with the 100 Charms Beauty's gaze. The 100 Charms Beauty calmly nodded and smiled, while Yu Chincho's gaze was somewhat flustered as he avoided it. He waved his hand at the few people and said, I still have some things to do. You guys help look after her. He pointed at Lure and left like he was escaping. Looking at the silhouette disappearing outside the door, the Allure Beauty's expression became slightly desolate. A trace of desolation flashed in her eyes, but she was immediately awakened by Ziyi's cheers. Ziyi was holding the little girl's hand as she clicked her tongue and asked in surprise, Are you called Lu, her? Liar, did Yu Qiancho help you deal with those men who bullied you? The few women didn't know whether to laugh or cry as they looked at Ziyi. It wouldn't be wrong to say that they were envious of her. They envied her for being heartless. No matter how big the matter was, it was in the past. Next time, she might still go against Yu Qiancho. Yan Yu had been secretly paying attention to the changes in the Allure Beauty's expression. In order to divert her thoughts, she secretly transmitted a message to her, Ze, this girl. The reason why she went against Yu Qiancho at every turn was to use this method to attract Yu Qiancho and make Yu Qiancho pay more attention to her. However, she didn't know that Yu Qiancho had always been amenable to coaxing but not coercion. If this continued, it would only make Yu Qiancho hate her more and more. AI. You must know that although Yu Qiancho doesn't look like a good person and doesn't do anything good, he has a chivalrous and tender side in his bones. He doesn't like unruly and willful women. Ziyi's actions have produced the opposite effect. It looks like we have to find a chance to give her some advice. The Allure Beauty nodded slightly in agreement. She couldn't help but smile bitterly at Ziyi. Just when Yu Qiancho returned to the rooftop, he suddenly noticed a stranger on the rooftop. It was an old man with a rigid face. From his blue robe, he could tell that he was from the Heartless Palace. Yu Qiancho sneered in his heart. What should come has come. Seeing Yu Qiancho walking over, Wei Chuanqiu and the other two revealed a strange expression. The blue-robed man cupped his hands at him expressionlessly and said, I am Fang Yi, a consecrator of the Heartless Palace. You must be the World Chamber of Commerce's sect master, Yu Qiancho. So it's Consecrator Fang. I've heard a lot about you. Yu Qiancho hurriedly returned the greeting with a smile. May I know why Consecrator Fang has come? Sect Master Yu is in charge of a sect and has many busy matters to deal with. I won't beat around the bush and get straight to the point. Fang Yi stared at Yu Qiancho with a sharp gaze and asked, Sect Master Yu, our sect's great consecrator, Zhang Yunxian, was ordered to protect you. He has always been by your side. Now that you've returned safely, may I know where Consecrator Zhang is? Yu Qiancho was stunned and asked with a face full of doubt, didn't Consecrator Zhang return first? We separated a month ago. Didn't he return to the Heartless Palace? Wei Chuanqiu and the other two exchanged glances. Fang Yi raised his eyebrows and snorted coldly, Sect Master Yu, did you remember wrongly? Consecrator Zhang was ordered to protect your safety. Before receiving the decree of our sect master, he would never separate from you. Sect Master Yu, why don't you think about it carefully? Maybe you can remember where Consecrator Zhang is. It would have been fine if you didn't mention it. I'm angry now that you mention it. Yu Qiancho glared at him and said, we originally wanted to go to the underworld's boundless horizon to have a look. Who knew that we would find a place called Underworld Spirit Manor, in the Underworld River? Consecrator Tsang said that he would go in and explore it and would be back soon. He asked me to hide in a safe place outside and wait for him. In the end, I waited for a few days and didn't see him coming back to find me. I didn't know how long I had to wait for him. Remembering that the wedding of the Celestial Emperor was approaching, I took the Underworld Emperor's token and asked someone to send me back first. From what you said, could it be that he hasn't returned yet? Underworld Spirit Manor. The few of them frowned and muttered. From the looks of confusion on their faces, it seemed that they had never heard of such a place. Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart, if the Heartless Palace has the guts, go to the Underworld Spirit Manor to investigate. I will wait for the good news. Fang Yi opened his eyes and looked at Yu Qianqiu and said slowly, not long before Sect Master Yu returned, I received a message from the sect saying that the nameplate belonging to Consecrator Tsang had shattered. In other words, Consecrator Tsang is dead. The other three were not surprised at all. Obviously, they had already heard about this from him. They all stared at Yu Qianqiu without blinking, as if they wanted to see something from his face. In the end, Yu Qianqiu said with a face full of shock, Consecrator Tsang is dead. How is this possible? How many people in the world can block his 3 swords as one sword drawing style? When did this happen? It's easy to dodge a spear in the open but hard to guard against a stab in the dark. I received news that Consecrator Tsang met with an accident early this morning. Fang Ye's indifferent expression suddenly paused. As he said this, he recalled that the location of Consecrator Tsang's accident was in the underworld. Moreover, Yu Qianqiu had returned on the same day. How many people in the world could rush to the illusionary immortal city from the exit of the underworld in less than a day? After pondering for a while, Fang Yi cupped his fists and said, since Sect Master Yu doesn't know, I won't disturb you anymore. As he said this, he specially cupped his fists towards Yunping. Congratulations Mountain Lord Bai Yun for breaking through to the intermediate stage of Immortal Emperor. Everyone, farewell. Then he turned into a flowing light and left. After everyone saw him off, Yu Qianqiu looked at Yunpeng and said in shock, Senior Yun's cultivation has broken through to the intermediate stage of Immortal Emperor. Yunpeng revealed a rare smile, this is all thanks to the Phoenix true blood you gave me. There's no need to be courteous with him, this is what he should do. You helped him guard his home, so it's natural for you to give him something. Wei Chuanqiu waved his hand and looked at Yu Qianqiu with a face full of annoyance. Back then, I felt that it wasn't right for you to get Consecrator Tsang Yun to protect you. Tell me the truth, is Consecrator Tsang Yun's death really not related to you? You can't wash yourself clean even if you jump into the river Styx, believe it or not. Yu Qianqiu said perfunctorily. All right. Now is not the time to argue about this. Deming Luan raised his hand to stop the two from bickering. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and frowned, it's good that you're back safely. Do you know that with the Immortal Emperor's wedding approaching, Immortal Empress Ji Wu has asked you about your composing progress multiple times? Everyone in the Immortal Palace is very concerned and has sent me multiple messages. As the leader of the Merchant Association, I have personally gone to the World Merchant Association many times for this matter. Since you're back, quickly prepare to go to the Immortal Palace with me. Damn it! What is this woman Ji Wu trying to do? Is she trying to trick me? Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. He was still a little worried that Ji Wu would reveal his background. Although he knew that if she wanted to reveal it, she would have done so long ago. Wei Chuanqiu glanced at him and asked Deming Luan worriedly, will something happen to him if we really let him go to the Immortal Palace? Yu Qianqiu nodded in agreement, isn't there still a few days? Isn't it too early to go now? Deming Luan sneered, what kind of occasion do you think the Immortal Emperor's wedding is? All the sect masters in the immortal world will be there to congratulate him. If you come up with something that can't be shown in public, will they let you perform in public? There's naturally a reason for you to go earlier. As he spoke, he looked at Yunpeng and Wei Chuanqiu's faces and finally at Yu Qianqiu's face. He said slowly, so you better think carefully. If you really don't have the confidence, you might as well say it now. Wei Chuanqiu's eyebrows twitched as she vaguely sensed something. She asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" De Mingluan stared at Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, "You said you have the token of the Emperor of the Underworld. Is this true?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the three and thought that there was no need to hide it. He nodded, "It is true." "What does this have to do with the token of the Emperor of the Underworld?" De Mingluan's eyes lit up. "Of course it has something to do with it. As far as I know, the token of the Emperor of the Underworld will not easily appear in the hands of unrelated people. It must be given to someone who is deeply trusted by the Emperor of the Underworld. If you really don't have the confidence for this wedding, we still have a chance to save our lives. That is, we will all hide in the underworld while we still have some time. With the protection of the Emperor of the Underworld, Jintai will not be able to do anything to us in the underworld. The Emperor of the Underworld will not let Jintai do anything to us even if it is for his own sake." "Us?" Yu Qianqiu was surprised. "You also want to escape with us?" "Of course." De Mingluan was angry, pointing and scolding. "What does your song have to do with me? You just have to make one request after another to the Celestial Palace." "Do you think the Celestial Palace is a place where you can bargain? Isn't it because of the two of them that I fought for you? If you run away, Qintai's face will be lost. How can I have a good ending as a guarantor? What else can I do but run away with you? It is my bad luck to know you. I have to live in fear every day." Chapter 1074. Wei Chuanqiu and Yunpeng looked at each other. They had known the big bright wheel for so many years, and it was rare to see him lose his composure like this. It was obvious that he was really unhappy, or that he had no confidence in Yu Qianqiu's trip to the Immortal Palace. The two looked at the culprit at the same time. Yu Qianqiu was also quite embarrassed. The big bright wheel treated him sincerely and helped him everywhere. If he destroyed the big bright wheel's rice bowl and forced him to flee for his life, it would be really unfair to him. He smiled awkwardly. "To tell you the truth, I went to the endless horizon of the underworld this time, and the Emperor of the Underworld happened to be there. The Red Armor Army invited me to meet the Emperor of the Underworld. To be honest, the Emperor of the Underworld is quite friendly to me." The others rolled their eyes when they heard this. He made it sound like he was a big shot. Wei Chuanqiu sneered and lamented, "You have to believe it. It is all true. But the key is that the token of the Emperor of the Underworld in my hand was accidentally obtained from someone else, not because I am a trusted person of the Emperor of the Underworld." They looked at each other, and Wei Chuanqiu asked in surprise, "In that case, you still dared to take it out to deceive people in Twilight City? Damn it. The army of the Underworld wanted to kill me. I took out the token of the Emperor of the Underworld for the sake of emergency." Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. "In fact, I didn't know it was the token of the Emperor of the Underworld before I took it out. I only knew that it should be of some help. Nobody would dare to take it out to cause trouble if they knew it was the token of the Emperor of the Underworld. In fact, it was because of this that the Emperor of the Underworld asked the Red Armor Army to interrogate me at the Endless Horizon." They were stunned, not expecting such a thing to happen. "That's strange. Where did you get the token of the Emperor of the Underworld?" Wei Chuanqiu looked up and down at the intact Yu Qianqiu and said, "Since you met the Emperor of the Underworld, did he just let you go?" "It is because he let me go that I feel strange." Yu Qianqiu shrugged at the great bright wheel and said, "There are still many things that I don't understand about this. Do you think I would dare to bring everyone to the Netherworld? What if we fall into a wolf's den right after escaping from the tiger's mouth? Even though he said this to everyone, in reality, he didn't want to easily escape until the last moment. If he didn't run, he would still have a chance if he worked hard, but if he ran, then all his years of hard work in the immortal world would be wasted, and he would have to start from scratch again. The most important thing was that he still had a way out at the critical moment. Even if he wanted to escape, there was no need for him to take the risk of escaping to the netherworld. Then what do you want to do? Demingluan asked. Yu Qianqiu looked into the distance and said with determination, "Isn't it just going to the Celestial Palace? There was nothing to be afraid of. If it really doesn't work, we can just run together. I've already prepared an escape route for everyone. No one can do anything to us." After his experience in the All-Heavens boundary, in terms of mentality, the Celestial Palace could no longer give him too much pressure. When they heard this, they looked at each other. They didn't know whether it was true or not. Demingluan narrowed his eyes and looked at him for a while, then said in a deep voice, "In that case, I have nothing to say. I'll go back and give some instructions. I'll look for you later." With that, he flew away. Demingluan went to make preparations. Yu Qianqiu, who had just returned and had to rush to the Celestial Palace, naturally had to make some preparations. After having a secret discussion with Wei Chuanqiu and Yunping on the rooftop, he quickly went downstairs and hid in a room. He took out the token of authority of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance and the token of passage to the underworld that the great Mingluan had given him. He held one in each hand and waited for a while. Because the token of authority of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance was too obvious, he put it away. As for the Netherworld Passage token, he didn't stand on ceremony. It might be difficult for others to imitate, but it wasn't difficult for him at all. He used Jinju to make dozens of tokens in one go as templates so that he could imitate it when needed. After doing this, he quickly gathered the lords of the various countries to meet in the conference room on the 21st floor. In the end, he found that everyone couldn't resist the temptation in the end. They used elixirs and the Immortal Ascension Passage to forcibly raise their cultivation to the early stage of small immortal. In this regard, Yu Qianqiu expressed his understanding. Because a small number of them had already reached the end of their lifespans. Since they couldn't be sure that they would succeed naturally, they could only take a shortcut. When the others saw the cultivation of the people around them skyrocketing, they couldn't remain indifferent. They gritted their teeth and followed suit. After everyone communicated, Yu Qianqiu carefully observed everyone's mental state. He was afraid that everyone would lose control of their emotions if they were cooped up here for too long. Some people would want to leave or go back. However, he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. After thinking about it carefully, he felt relieved. Think about it, a mere few years was really nothing to cultivators. Moreover, the illusory immortal city had cultivation resources that everyone couldn't compare to in the mortal world. As long as it was something that everyone needed for cultivation, the World Chamber of Commerce had never been stingy with everyone. What Yu Qianqiu didn't know, and most importantly, was that the longer everyone stayed in the illusory immortal city, the more they understood how dangerous the outside world was, and the more they understood how tiny they were. Even though they were overlords of an area in the mortal world, in the immortal dimension that was filled with sects like trees in a forest, any ordinary expert from any sect would be able to easily deal with them. With their cultivations, it was impossible for them to stand out in the immortal dimension. Therefore, whether it was in terms of cultivation resources or safety, having the World Chamber of Commerce protect them in the illusory immortal city was really the best. Whether it was the barrenness of the mortal world or the dangers of the outside world, they temporarily didn't consider it. Currently, they had Yu Qianqiu who could provide them with resources. If they didn't make good use of it, they wouldn't be the rulers of the various countries they used to be. When he returned to the rooftop, the great bright will was already waiting for him. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he took out the token of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance and the token of passage to the underworld. When the great bright will received it, It was silent for a moment before it said, "It seems that these things didn't help you much in the underworld. Because the token of the underworld emperor is more useful than them." Yu Qianqiu smiled. Yunpeng and Wei Chuanqiu, who were at the side, seemed to be sending him off. Wei Chuanqiu looked around and didn't see any movement from the women. She asked thoughtfully, "You're not sure if you'll be lucky or not, aren't you going to say goodbye to them before you leave?" "I've been wandering outside all year round and haven't had time to accompany them. I've already let them down. I'd rather have them complain about me and think that I'm a womanizer than have them worry about me. I can only hope that I can create a future for them with no regrets." Yu Qianqiu shook his head with a wry smile before summoning a flying shuttle and taking the lead to fly into it. The great bright will followed closely behind. A stream of light flew far away from the rooftop of the World Chamber of Commerce. It blended into the streams of light that rose and fell in the illusory immortal city and disappeared. The disciples of the various sects who had been secretly watching the World Chamber of Commerce also quietly disappeared. On a day when the sky was filled with rosy clouds, Yu Qianqiu flew towards the main peak of the blissful immortal realm for the first time. There was a majestic palace shining brightly amidst the misty clouds. The two landed in a world made of gold. Relying on a token that shone with golden light, the great bright will brought him into the righteous heaven gate, which was guarded by two golden-robed guards. Yu Qianqiu followed behind the great bright wheel and stared dumbfoundedly at the incomparably wide and majestic golden plaza in front of him. The ground was paved with large golden tiles. There were golden pillars, golden towers, golden arched bridges, golden railings, and other things at regular intervals. In addition to the majestic palace that shone with golden light in the distance, this was clearly a golden kingdom, a golden world. Walking in this golden world, the ground was like a glossy yellow mirror that could clearly reflect the people walking on it. Each golden pillar that brushed past was several times thicker than a person, and each golden tile on the ground was several times wider than a bed. Looking around in such a grand atmosphere, it made one feel so insignificant, like an ant climbing on a mountain of gold. This was Jin Tai's immortal palace. Yu Qianqiu was inwardly speechless. If he didn't know that Jin Tai was a gold spirit, just the aura of the immortal palace in front of him would have frightened him. The two walked for more than an hour before arriving at the bottom of a golden flight of steps that increased in height by 100 meters. At the top of the flight of steps was the huge immortal palace that shone with golden light. It made one look up at the mountain and added a sense of oppression. On both sides of the flight of steps, there were halberd-wielding guards at regular intervals. The strict atmosphere was used to guide people. The great bright will suddenly raised its hand and the two stopped at the bottom of the flight of steps. On the way here, the great bright will had told Yu Qianqiu that normal people were not allowed to use spells to fly within the immortal palace. They could only walk. Yu Qianqiu looked at the flight of steps and was speechless. What kind of rule was this? They had already walked for more than half an hour. Adding on the flight of steps that were hundreds of meters high, wouldn't it be a waste of other people's time? Just as he was thinking, he saw a person who violated the rules. Instead of walking, she directly flashed down from the flight of steps and landed on the lowest step in front of the two of them. The person who came was wearing a golden robe. Not only did she look old, she was actually an old lady with wrinkled skin and white hair. Her eyes were as sharp as an eagle's as she looked at Yu Qianqiu, causing Yu Qianqiu's heart to jump. Someone who could brazenly violate the rules of the immortal palace was naturally not an ordinary person. Yu Qianqiu was muttering the identity of the person who came. The great bright will had already secretly warned him, this person is the chief steward of the immortal palace. Her name is Nie Shaoqian. Her son is the commander of internal affairs, He Lai, who controls the immortal palace guards. Both mother and son have high cultivation and can be said to be the two people the immortal emperor trusts the most. After saying this secretly, the great bright will quickly cupped his hands and bowed to the person who came. Greetings, Chief Steward Nia. Nia Xiaoqian. Her name is Nia Xiaoqian. Why isn't her son surnamed Ning? The corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth couldn't help but twitch. He was quite shocked. This chief steward Nia ignored the great bright wheel and stared at Yu Qianzhou. She asked indifferently, "You're Yu Qianzhou?" Yu Qianzhou hurriedly bowed and said, "Yu Qianzhou greets Chief Steward Nia." Chapter 1075. Nia Xiaoqian looked at him for a while and asked, "Are you ready?" This baffling question made Yu Qianzhou stare blankly. After being secretly pointed out by the great bright wheel, he finally understood that Yi Zichen was asking if he had prepared the song for his gift. Immediately, he modestly replied, "I have prepared it, but I am afraid that I cannot present it." Nia Xiaoqian didn't ask any more questions. She crushed a jade talisman, and after a while, a beam of light flew over from afar. A middle-aged woman wearing a green veil landed on the ground and walked up to the two. She cupped her hands and said, "Greetings, manager." Yu Qianzhou glanced at her and couldn't help but be curious. After entering the paradise of bliss, everyone he saw was wearing a golden robe. He didn't expect to see a woman dressed in a different style in the immortal palace. He secretly transmitted his voice to the great bright wheel. "Who is this woman?" The great bright wheel, who was standing to the side, replied, "Her name is Qingyang. She is the one who choreographed the dance for the immortal emperor. Because she often dances, she is probably the only person in the immortal palace who doesn't need to wear a golden robe like us." Qingyang. This person is Yu Qianzhou. This is related to the immortal emperor's wedding, so you better help him. Otherwise, he will become the laughing stock of the world. General Manager Nia Xiaoqian pouted at Yu Qianzhou. "Right here." Qingyang coldly looked around. Her words and actions were not as respectful as the great bright will to Nia Xiaoqian. Nia Xiaoqian frowned and said, "The song for the immortal emperor's wedding can only be released to the public on the day of the wedding. Not to mention, his unorthodox song still needs your arrangement. Let's go to your Green Pear Palace to have a look. If he really can't be shown in public, I'll explain to Immortal Empress Wu Ji." Qingyang didn't say anything. She turned around and flew away like a streak of light. Chief Steward Nia swept a glance at the remaining two and said, "Let's go to Green Pear Palace together." She also transformed into a stream of light and flashed away. The great bright wheel immediately flew after her. At the bottom of the stairs, Yu Qianzhou was at a loss. He then jogged in the direction that they flew in. After running for a short distance, a ray of light shot back. Deming had returned and was floating in the air. He stared down at the ground and asked angrily, "Yu Qianzhou, why are you running here? Damn it! Didn't you say that ordinary people aren't allowed to fly here?" The expression on Yu Qianzhou's face was even more furious than his. Seeing that others could fly while he could only run, it would be strange if he could be happy. Deming Luan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If the head chief says it's okay, then it's okay. What did she say that it was okay? If you don't make things clear, would I dare to take the risk? Yu Qianzhou gritted his teeth. He was too lazy to argue with Deming Luan. He waved his hand and interrupted, "Stop talking nonsense. This isn't a place for you to behave atrociously. Quickly follow me. Don't let the head chief wait for too long." Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou relaxed. Thus, the two of them quickly flew away from this place. After flying out of the Golden World, the two of them headed straight for a mountain peak not far away. On the peak of the mountain, there was a huge ancient palace made of pure wood. On the small square outside the palace, Qingyang, who looked indistinct and serious, glanced at Yu Qianzhou and said, "Come with me." Yu Qianzhou cautiously glanced at the great bright wheel. When he saw the great bright wheel nod, he quickly followed behind Qingyang. Mingluan followed behind head chief steward Nia. Who knew that Qing Nyang, who was at the front, would suddenly turn around and say, "The two of you, don't follow us. Especially you, head chief steward. The atmosphere of my green pear palace doesn't match your arrogant manner." After she finished speaking, she turned around and continued to walk into the palace. Following behind her, Yu Qianqiu secretly clicked his tongue. He didn't know what kind of background this woman had. She actually dared to speak to the Golden Emperor's trusted aide, the head chief steward Nia, in such a tone. Stopping, head chief steward Nia had a helpless expression. He turned around to look at Mingluan and smiled wryly. "My daughter really doesn't give me any face." Yu Qianqiu, who had just stepped into the palace, pricked up his ears. Mingluan watched as Yu Qianqiu disappeared into the palace. After a moment of silence, she bluntly said, "Head chief steward, forgive me for speaking bluntly. Our loyalty to the immortal emperor cannot be forced onto the next generation." Once these treasonous words came out, head chief steward Nia's body shook. Her sharp gaze pierced straight into Mingluan's calm eyes. A murderous aura lingered around her body. After a long time, she slowly retracted it back into her body. She slightly sighed and said, "Perhaps what you said is right. However, this is the only time. I don't want to hear you say such words in my ears again." Then, her tone changed and she coldly said, "I can see that you are very considerate of this Yu Qianqiu. Head chief steward is wise. I have always been loyal to the immortal emperor. The sun and moon can bear witness." Mingluan slightly bowed towards her. Then, she helplessly said, "I won't hide it from head chief steward. I actually don't have much of a relationship with this Yu Qianqiu. The reason why I take care of him is because we were friends in the past. As long as it doesn't harm the immortal palace's interests, please help me a little." Head chief steward Nia's gaze that was full of deep meaning moved away from him. She didn't pursue the matter any further. Instead, she looked at the palace gate of the Green Pear Palace with a sense of loss. Everyone had their own story. Even though she was a high-ranking official, she was no exception. The people outside could not hear any sound from inside the Green Pear Palace. It was clear that there was a soundproof formation inside. About an hour later, Qingyang's figure flashed out from the palace gate. Mingluan didn't see Yu Qianqiu. Her eyes couldn't help but slightly narrow as she stared at Qingyang. "How is it? Is this Yu Qianqiu's item presentable?" Head chief steward Nia helplessly asked. Qingyang's expression was cold. She didn't directly comment on whether Yu Qianqiu's item was good or bad. She only replied without a smile, "Help him make some arrangements. When the time comes, it should be able to satisfy the immortal emperor and immortal empress." Hearing these words, Mingluan's anxious heart finally relaxed. He knew that since this woman said these words, Yu Qianqiu should be able to pass this hurdle. Head chief steward Nia also slightly nodded his head. "Then I'll leave this Yu Qianqiu to you. You must bring out something satisfactory on the day of the wedding. I have a request." Qingyang coldly said, "I need enough people to accompany the dancers. I also need to create enough instrumental music." The wrinkled chief steward Nia didn't hesitate to say, "This is not a problem. I will contact the people in charge of manpower and skilled craftsmen. They will do their best to cooperate with you." After receiving the reply, Qingyang didn't say any polite words of thanks. Instead, she turned around with a cold expression and was about to leave. At this time, a golden-robed guard quickly rushed over and bowed to Chief Steward Nia, reporting to Chief Steward. "The Immortal Empress heard that Yu Qianqiu is here and wants to see Yu Qianqiu." Everyone present was startled when they heard this, especially Qingyang. She stopped in her tracks and turned back around, frowning as she looked at Chief Steward Nia. The latter seemed to know that she didn't like people to disturb her work. However, no matter what, Ji Wu was now carrying the title of the Immortal Empress. As long as it wasn't an unreasonable request, it wouldn't be easy to refuse. With a straight face, he said, since the immortal empress wants to see him, Qingniang. Quickly tell Yu Qianqiu to come out and see the immortal empress at the Crystal Palace. Qingniang coldly replied, yes. Her figure flickered as she returned to the palace. Not long after, Yu Qianqiu ran out with a puzzled look on his face. He looked at the great bright wheel with a questioning gaze. It seemed that Qingniang hadn't told him anything. Seeing the confusion on his face, Chief Steward Nia pointed at the guard who came to report and said indifferently, Yu Qianqiu. Immortal Empress Ji Wu wants to see you. Go with her to see her. After that, quickly return to the Green Pear Palace and continue to listen to her orders. Do you understand? Yu Qianqiu was startled. Why did that woman Ji Wu want to see him now? Confused, he cupped his fists and replied, yes. Then, he flew away with the guard. The great bright wheel's eyes also flickered. He didn't know whether it was a good or bad thing for Ji Wu to summon Yu Qianqiu. He frowned and cupped his fists, Chief Steward. If there is nothing else, I will return to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. Chief Steward Nia nodded and left first. The great bright wheel looked in the direction of the Crystal Palace in the distance, then frowned and turned into a stream of light and flew away. Outside a gate with a tall jade wall, Yu Qianqiu immediately saw the colorful jade palace inside. The guard stopped outside the gate and stretched his hand inside. Don't let the immortal empress wait for too long. Quickly go and see her. Thank you. Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and walked in without any clues on his face. In fact, his mind was spinning quickly. He didn't know if Lu Yanqing and Immortal Crocodile Monarch were here. As soon as he stepped into the palace, he was immediately attracted by a thatched hut not far away. He didn't understand why there was such a strange thatched hut in this place that looked like a crystal palace. The courtyard was empty and desolate, and not a single person could be seen. Just as Yu Qianqiu was wondering why the dignified immortal queen's residence did not have a servant, he saw a familiar person walking out of the palace door in front of him. It was none other than Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing looked at him with a complicated expression and was stunned for a moment. Then she bowed and led the way into the hall. The immortal empress is waiting for you inside. Although there was a smile on Yu Qianqiu's face, there was an unconcealable coldness in his eyes. It was hard for him to have a good impression of this woman who made decisions on her own and made him uncomfortable. When he walked along the jade steps to the door of the hall, he smiled with a slightly sarcastic smile and cupped his fists. Thank you. When Lu Yanqing saw the unforgettable coldness in his eyes, her face couldn't help but turn pale. Her delicate body swayed for a moment, and she turned back and stepped into the hall with her head slightly lowered. After Yu Qianqiu followed her in, he found that the hall was empty. He didn't understand what it meant. He saw Lu Yanqing, who was leading the way, turn into the back hall. He paused for a moment but finally followed her. Who knew that as soon as he stepped into the rear hall, a large hand would grab the collar behind his neck like a sneak attack. Yu Qianqiu was shocked and quickly dodged while turning his head to look, only to see a black-clothed silver-haired big man laughing loudly at him. Stinking brat. We finally meet again. Old monster. Yu Qianqiu was pleasantly surprised. Who else could this person be but the immortal crocodile monarch that he had been talking about? Before he landed, he flashed back into the air. The two fellows who had not seen each other for a long time couldn't help but hug each other. Chapter 1076. After pushing each other away, the two of them threw punches at each other, or patted each other's backs. They couldn't help but sigh when they reunited after such a long time. During this time, Yu Qianqiu faintly noticed that the strength of the other party's hand seemed to be a little weaker than before. He remembered that when the other party casually patted him twice, he had to grit his teeth in pain. Now, it was just like that. He didn't think too much about it. It was probably because his cultivation had improved. He smiled and looked up and down. Old monster. How have you been these years? Immortal Crocodile's expression stiffened slightly. He pushed him and waved his hand to change the topic. Let's not just talk about ourselves. You and Sister Ji Woo can be considered old acquaintances. Hurry up and say hello. Yu Qianqiu looked over, and saw Lu Yanqing accompanying a woman with a noble temperament that was even more beautiful than Yu Qianqiu. Her long white dress slid down the jade stairs behind her like flowing water. Her black eyebrows, eyes, nose, and red lips were all shockingly beautiful. This was not the first time he had met this person. If it wasn't immortal monarch Ji Woo, who else could it be? Beautiful. No wonder Jean Dun wanted to marry her. In order to show respect or politeness, Yu Qianqiu stopped his eyes from sliding to the other party's full chest. He smiled bitterly and bowed. Yu Qianqiu greets the immortal empress. Ji Woo's beautiful eyes carefully looked at Yu Qianqiu. Although it wasn't the first time she had met Yu Qianqiu had a head full of braids and his skin was bronze. He was dressed like a barbarian. It was the first time she had seen Yu Qianqiu's original appearance. In the end, she found that it didn't match the elegant and handsome scholar in her mind. She was somewhat disappointed. After a pause, she said faintly, Yu Qianqiu. We meet again. Yu Qianqiu is honored to be able to see you again. Yu Qianqiu's words and actions remained respectful and courteous, but he was actually cursing in his heart. If it wasn't for this woman calling him out, he wouldn't have been tossed here to do such a disgusting thing. Ji Woo didn't seem to like the title, Immortal Empress. She frowned a few times. Immortal Crocodile was also a little unhappy. He frowned and waved his hand. All right. Stop pretending to be refined. I know better than anyone what kind of person you are. Little Sister Ji Woo spent a lot of effort to bring you here not to listen to your flattery. Do you know why she brought you here? In any case, it was definitely not something good. Yu Qianqiu's expression did not change. I don't know. Immortal Crocodile chuckled coldly and circled around him until Yu Qianqiu's hair stood on end. He clicked his tongue and said, Kid, you're not simple at all. You actually found a way to come to the immortal realm from the human world and set up a sect in the immortal realm. Are you trying to bully others because they don't know your background? Thank you, Immortal Empress and Brother Crocodile, for keeping my secret, Yu Qianqiu said politely, but in his heart, he was wondering what this guy was trying to do by beating around the bush. It's good that you know. Immortal Crocodile placed his big hands on Yu Qianqiu's shoulders and said sincerely, then shouldn't you express something? Express something. Yu Qianqiu broke away from his hands and asked warily, express what? Immortal Crocodile glanced at Ji Woo, then turned back and said firmly, I won't hide it from you. Little Sister Ji Woo didn't want to agree to this wedding at all. It was Lady Jean who threatened her with my life that forced Little Sister Ji Woo to agree. The two of us have always wanted to escape, but there are many experts in the Paradise Immortal realm. With our strength, we can't escape at all. When we were in the human world, I saw the magic of your teleportation formation, Yu Qianqiu. Please help us this once. Use the teleportation formation to send us back to the human world. How about that? This. Yu Qianqiu secretly glanced at Lu Yanqing and asked secretly, did you tell them the secret of going back and forth to the human world? No. I didn't say a word about this, Lu Yanqing replied quietly. Yu Qianqiu was relieved when he heard this. He smiled bitterly at Immortal Crocodile and said, if you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have come back from the human world. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you now. There's nothing I can do about this. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but he didn't dare to. He and Ji Woo didn't have any friendship at all. It was not worthwhile to take risks for her. Although he had some friendship with a mortal crocodile in the human world, it was built on the basis of mutual benefit. Their relationship had not reached the point where they could reveal any secret. Besides, when he came here, Immortal Crocodile's wife disappeared. If he didn't suspect him, who else could he suspect? If his wife was stolen, no man would agree to it. He was afraid that Jean Tai would dig 3 feet into the ground to find him. Even if he hid in the human world, he might not be safe. In short, saving these 2 people wouldn't do him any good. Instead, it would cause a lot of trouble. He couldn't waste so many years of effort to save them. It was not worth it. Anyway, Ji Woo wasn't his woman. Whoever she married had nothing to do with him. So he could only refuse. The back hall instantly became frighteningly quiet. Immortal Crocodile's face gradually turned sinister. He sneered and said, "I knew you were ruthless and didn't want to cause trouble for the 2 of us. Since you didn't save us first, don't blame me for being rude. You came from the human world during the war, have the divine sword of the demon lord of 10,000 swords, and are also cultivating the Samadhi true fire. There's no need for me to help you keep it a secret." Ji Woo and Lu Yanqing were shocked. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to have the divine sword of the demon lord of 10,000 swords, and he was also cultivating the Samadhi true fire. "Are you threatening me?" Yu Qianqiu's expression turned cold. Being threatened in such an undisguised manner, the thing that had settled in his bones after many years of tempering inadvertently came out again. At this time, he ignored the people standing here and just narrowed his eyes and sneered, "Old monster. Be a man with a conscience. If I hadn't saved you too, you would still be trapped in the heaven and earth universe formation. So, I don't owe you anything. If I remember correctly, the 2 of you promised not to reveal my secret. I didn't expect you to go back on your word." For him, there was no point in pretending now. Whether he saved them or they revealed his secret, the immortal palace would not let him go. In that case, why should he be threatened by them and save them? Either way, his hard work would be ruined. If he went back and started from scratch, he might as well leave the 2 of them to be tortured by Jean Tai. No one would have an easy time. Immortal Crocodile glared at him and was about to flare up, but Ji Woo reached out and stopped him. Ji Woo looked at Yu Qianqiu with surprise. She could see that he wasn't afraid of her at all. She frowned slightly and said, "Yu Qianqiu. If you have a way to help us escape, why don't you help us? We will definitely repay you in the future." "Repay you in the future?" Yu Qianqiu sneered. "I think it's better not to. Today, I have seen what it means to go back on your word. How can I expect you to repay me in the future?" Lu Yanqing, who was at the side, was secretly shocked. She didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu wasn't even afraid of an intermediate-stage immortal emperor expert. She understood that it wasn't luck that he was able to get to where he was today. Just this courage and spirit alone wasn't something an ordinary person could compare with. "You." Immortal Crocodile, who was about to flare up again, was stopped by Ji Woo's brother Crocodile. Ji Woo stared at Yu Qianqiu, who was standing expressionlessly. After hesitating for a while, she bit her lip and said slowly, "Yu Qianqiu. As long as you save us, I am willing to be your woman." Although her face was still cold, there was already a faint redness under her pink skin. It took a lot of courage to say such words. As soon as she said this, everyone thought they heard wrong. However, she said it word by word, so it was difficult to mishear. In an instant, the entire palace was so quiet that even ants could be heard. "Ah." Yu Qianqiu, who was acting like a dog that didn't eat shit, choked. His mouth opened so wide that a fist could fit in it. His domineering and arrogant aura had all gone to hell. His current image was no different from that of a fool. Immortal Crocodile reacted and immediately said anxiously, "This kid and Jean Tai are not good people. Being his woman is the same as falling out of the tiger's den into the wolf's den. At most, we will just die. Sister, why do you have to humiliate yourself like this?" Ji Woo ignored him at this time. She was going all out, but Yu Qianqiu did not answer. As a top beauty who had always been high and mighty, it hurt her self-esteem a little. She immediately said with a frosty face, "Yu Qianqiu, do you think this is not good enough, or do you think my cultivation and looks are not good enough for you?" Ah! Yu Qianqiu was stunned by her roar. He didn't understand what she was doing. He smiled bitterly and said, "I am good enough, I am good enough. I am not good enough for you. I, Yu Qianqiu, am not even good enough to carry your shoes, cut the crap." Ji Woo waved her hand and interrupted him. She was embarrassed and angry. She said sternly, "So you agree? Kid, how dare you?" Immortal Crocodile pointed at Yu Qianqiu and shouted angrily, "If you dare to take advantage of me, I will fight you to the death. I say, the two of you, please spare me." Yu Qianqiu gave in and bowed to the two of them. "It's not that I don't want to help the two of you, but I really can't do anything. The treasures I set up the teleportation array are used up. The two of you must have heard about my master challenging the Emperor of the Underworld and about me going to the Underworld. In fact, I wanted to go to the Underworld to find my master and ask for more treasures. Unfortunately, I didn't find my master. Otherwise, how could I not save him? It wasn't that he didn't like beauties, especially a great beauty like Ji Woo, but he was not the kind of person who would lose his mind at the sight of a beautiful woman. No matter how beautiful Ji Woo was, to him, she was still an outsider who he didn't know. He would not trade the future of a group of women in his family. Lu Yanqing looked at him in surprise. Ji Woo's beauty made her heart beat faster. She didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be so indifferent. Chapter 1077. The treasure used to set up the teleportation formation. Immortal Lord Crocodile was startled. He calmed down and asked, "Are you talking about the silver balls I saw before?" Yu Qianqiu immediately showed a grateful expression and cupped his hands at him. "Old monster, it's good that you remember. You've finally cleared my name. You've seen how to use those things. The more you use, the less you'll get." He turned to Ji Woo and said, "Immortal Empress, please understand. I really can't do anything for the time being. I'm warning you, don't call me Immortal Empress." Ji Woo said through gritted teeth. She had said those embarrassing words without knowing the truth. Now, she could only use anger to cover up her embarrassment. Yu Qianqiu had a fawning expression on his face as he repeatedly agreed. As long as this matter could be resolved peacefully, he did not mind suffering a bit of grievance. To him, the true deciding factor was who would have the last laugh, and it was definitely not a momentary face. This was because he had never thought of himself as a gentleman, and he did not mind admitting that he was a vile character. As a result, Ji Woo felt nauseous. The reason why she had said those words before was because she had thought that Yu Qianqiu was a talented scholar from the songs she had heard. It should be known that the more beautiful a woman was, the more they would yearn for a scholar. Subconsciously, she had some admiration, which was why she had said those words without thinking. But now, it almost made her vomit. She hated herself for being blind and almost giving herself to a sycophant. Thus, her pretty face turned pale from anger, and she wished she could slap herself twice. She even wanted to skin Yu Qianqiu alive. Immortal Crocodile exclaimed in surprise. "I checked those small silver balls back then, and I didn't seem to notice anything unusual. Can't I refine more? It would be easy if it were as easy as you say." Yu Qianqiu complained bitterly, "I didn't have to risk my life to run to the netherworld, and I almost got killed. Don't think that those silver balls are simple. Only my master knows how to make them. Only my master can make them. Did you find your master in the netherworld? Immortal Lord Crocodile asked. Yu Qianqiu shook his head dejectedly. No. Immortal Lord Crocodile was not surprised by this answer. Based on his understanding, Bai Changchun had been forced into the mysterious Forbidden Land by the Emperor of the Netherworld. Immortal Lord Crocodile continued to ask questions about some suspicious points, including why Yu Qianqiu had the Emperor of the Netherworld's token. However, this was Yu Qianqiu's forte. He easily dealt with it. In the end, Immortal Lord Crocodile was no longer angry. To be honest, Lu Yanqing, who was at the side, was also a woman and a great beauty. In fact, she was very sympathetic towards Ji Wu's experience. She did not understand why Yu Qianqiu was unwilling to help them when he could easily travel back and forth between the human world and there were peerless beauties throwing themselves into his arms. Then she remembered that she was also a beautiful woman and had thrown herself at him, but he had not accepted her either. She could not help but feel bitter. After experiencing so many things, she could reflect on some things. Maybe Yu Qianqiu had his reasons for doing this. It had been proven that Yu Qianqiu's decisions were often unreasonable at first, but they were often right in the end, unlike her, who always brought trouble to others. Get him out. Ji Wu, whose face was as cold as ice, suddenly said. Although she didn't mention any names, everyone knew that she was asking someone to get out of here. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Yu Qianqiu and sighed. We had high hopes for you, but, if we had known, we would not have dragged you into this. Go. Where should I go? Yu Qianqiu spread his hands in an aggrieved manner and said, if you leak my secret, the Immortal Palace will definitely not let me off. Since I'm going to die either way, I won't bother running around. I'll just leave it to fate. How could he leave so casually in fear? His words were a roundabout way of sounding out what was going on. Immortal Lord Crocodile glared at him. We are not as bad as you think. Go. We will not drag you down with us. This time, Yu Qianqiu was relieved. He immediately patted his chest and promised. Old monster. Don't worry, as long as I am alive, I will find a way to save you and the Immortal Empress. Just you wait. Immortal Lord Crocodile's teeth hurt. She had already become the Immortal Empress. What was done was done. Why would she need you to save her? You were just looking for excitement. He stole a glance at his sister, Ji Wu. Sure enough, Ji Wu gritted her teeth, pointed her finger at Yu Qianqiu, and yelled, get out of here. Yu Qianqiu did not mind her bossy attitude at all. He nodded and bowed as he walked out. Then I will not disturb you anymore. If you need anything, you can send someone to Green Pear Palace to find me at any time. Ji Wu was so angry that she turned her head to the side. She regretted what she had said before. She would rather not see this despicable person. Even if she was beaten to death, she would never let him see her ugly face again. Lu Yanqing, who was at the side, secretly sighed. Combined with the fact that Yu Qianqiu was not afraid of Ji Wu's words and actions, and then seeing Yu Qianqiu's fawning look, and the back view of him being scolded to leave, she actually felt a burst of sadness for no reason, and almost shed tears. In an instant, it was as if she had taken a miraculous elixir. She vaguely understood some things. In fact, with this man's ability to come and go freely, there was no need for him to humiliate himself like this. At worst, he could just leave. However, as the supreme being of the human world, while enjoying the glory, he also worked hard to fulfill his duty. In order to stop the killing in the human world, he brought everyone to the immortal world to work hard. He shouldered the future and hope of too many people in the human world. Everyone only saw the glorious side of him in front of them, but they did not know the heartache of him being humiliated behind his back. Perhaps what she was thinking was exactly what Yu Qianqiu was subconsciously forcing himself to do. However, Yu Qianqiu was black-hearted and thick-skinned. He had long been invulnerable to such things. As long as he could take advantage of it, everything else was a piece of cake. You humiliate yourself, I'll do my own. Let's see who has the last laugh. After exiting the Crystal Palace, Yu Qianqiu was brought back to the Green Pear Palace. He walked alone to the entrance of the main hall. Just as he stretched his foot over the threshold, he quickly retracted it. He was afraid that someone would be angry at his impoliteness. Fortunately, Qingyang's voice came from inside, "Come in." Only then did he tidy his clothes and walk in. However, once he stepped in, time passed day by day, but he never came out again. No one knew what he was doing inside. It was another morning filled with rosy clouds. On the peak of the Passion Mound, the highest peak of the Passionless Palace, there was another rainbow. Wang Qing, who was the closest to the rainbow, sat cross-legged on the edge of the cliff. He received the rosy clouds in the morning and bathed in the starlight at night. He sat there motionlessly for a few days and nights. As the morning sun rose, coinciding with the angle of light refraction, a rare and magnificent tear stain appeared on the silver mask that covered his face. It gave off a sorrowful feeling, as if the flower had splashed its tears and the bird had left its heart. In the eye sockets of the mask, the eyes that had not been opened for a few days and nights slowly opened. Looking around, one suddenly found that today's rosy clouds were unprecedentedly magnificent and majestic. Is this to send me off? Wang Qing let out a sigh and slowly stood up. He turned around smoothly and walked towards the giant sword that was inserted in the middle of the mountain peak. He stopped when he was about 10 feet away from it. The snow-blue giant sword gradually emitted a magnificent snow-blue light that flowed endlessly on the sword. It seemed to have felt something and let out a soft, ing-ing sound, which was hoarse and heart-stirring, lasting for a long time. A gust of wind blew, the blue robe fluttered, and the long black hair behind the mask intertwined and danced. The giant sword suddenly burst out a breathtaking snow-blue brilliance, like a bright pearl between heaven and earth. It complemented Wang Qing, who was standing 10 feet away. The momentum faintly showed the tendency of man and sword becoming one. You and I are connected. I know that you want to show your brilliance, but do you know why I have not pulled you out? Because you and I want to accumulate the strongest sword intent. Once we use it, we must be invincible. The giant sword seemed to understand Wang Qing's words. The huge sword body trembled faintly, and the soft sound also became high-pitched. The wide blue robe on Wang Qing's body suddenly rolled against the wind. A sharp aura burst out from the edge of the robe and drew an arc on the ground of the mountain peak. The soil and stones on the ground were blown away by the wind. With the giant sword as the center, a circular deep mark with a radius of 10 feet appeared around it. Wang Qing touched the snow-blue ring on his left index finger, and then his left hand formed a claw on the giant sword. The top of the mountain trembled, and a cylindrical rock with a diameter of 6 meters and a depth of more than 10 meters slowly pulled out the six-dragon snow-blue sword. After the whole mountain rock was completely pulled out of the top of the mountain with the giant sword, the snow-blue ring on Wang Qing's index finger that was condensed into a claw shot out a blue light. It directly swallowed the whole mountain rock together with the giant sword and disappeared. Wang Qing brazenly put the large rock and the giant sword into the storage ring. His intention was very obvious. He still did not want to pull out the sword until that moment. He wanted to brew the strongest sword intent when he pulled out the sword. The round pit that had just appeared on the top of the mountain was under his feet. He was not in the mood to look at it. He just wanted to see what could attract his attention at this moment. He slowly turned around and turned around. The wide blue robe wrapped around his tall and thin body was deformed and tossed in the wind. His long hair sometimes blew straight back, and sometimes it was blown messily by the wind on his shoulders. The pair of eyes under the silver mask showed a rare tenderness. She looked around at the sea of clouds, the rising sun, and the rainbow that traversed the peak of the mountain. It was as if she wanted to take in all of these and keep them in her memory forever. However, in the sea of clouds in front of him, a sweet-tempered woman from his memories surged out and smiled at him. Suddenly, an innocent child came out of the sea of clouds and ran around the woman. In the end, the child hugged the legs of the sweet-tempered woman and asked, "Mother, where is father?" "Over there." The gentle woman raised her hand and pointed at Wang Qing at the top of the mountain. The child immediately turned around and looked at her and laughed. The morning glow was filled with the laughter of an innocent child. The eyes in the holes of the silver mask slowly closed. Tears seeped out from the closed eyes, and a murmur came from under the mask, "I was wrong. Ruoyun, wait for me to come back." A stream of light suddenly shot from the top of the mountain to the sky. The strong airflow directly opened a cloud path in the sea of clouds and went far away. Chapter 1078. Immortal World, Paradise. Immortal Realm, Green Pear Palace. There were tens of thousands of mountains in the Paradise Immortal Realm, and there were also tens of thousands of buildings that were large or exquisite. However, there were not many places like the Green Pear Palace, which was as cold as autumn. Perhaps it was more appropriate to describe it as tranquil and serene. It did not have the kind of hostility that was full of intrigue or killing. At least this Green Pear Palace, which was shrouded in clouds and mist, looked so quiet and peaceful on the surface. However, this was only on the surface. The liveliness inside was incomparable to any other place in the entire fairyland of bliss. In the center of the Green Pear Palace, there was a large palace room. Under the moss-covered eaves, the old wooden door was tightly shut. Standing outside the wooden door, one could not hear any movement inside, but as soon as one entered the room, one would be attracted by the dancing and singing inside. In this huge palace room, the floor was polished to the point that it could reflect one's reflection. Countless singers were holding various musical instruments and singing, and a large number of dancers were showing their graceful figures. They were separated by a soundproof enchantment and did not disturb each other. However, all the soundproof enchantment in the palace room was removed today because they had to fully cooperate with the main person personally chosen by the Immortal Emperor and the Immortal Empress. Under the training of Palace Master Green Pear Palace, they had to cooperate with the main person again and again, but the main person was really stupid. Often, one action would cause everyone to keep repeating. "Damn it. I don't want to play anymore." A sad and indignant voice sounded in the palace room again. Yu Qianqiu collapsed on the ground and lay motionless on the smooth green jade floor like a puddle of mud. When he first arrived here, his interest was piqued by the number of beauties and handsome men here. Due to his unattractive appearance, he felt a sense of accomplishment, like a crane standing in a flock of chickens. It should be said that a chicken stands in a flock of cranes. Imagine a chicken being surrounded by a flock of cranes. How great a sense of accomplishment would that chicken feel? But after being repeatedly trained by Green Pear Palace Master Qingyang for a few days, he felt like dying. Thus, he sadly realized that the free-range chicken was still the same free-range chicken. It was impossible for it to be prettier than a flock of red-crowned cranes. At most, it would be more eye-catching if one of them ran into the flock. "I can barely make do with singing, but you actually want me to dance a classical dance. Choreograph your grandma." Yu Qianqiu lay on the ground, half dead. He looked at Qingyang, who was coldly staring at him from the side, and he was about to collapse. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes a few times, tilted his head to the side, and said angrily, "Don't look at me, I really can't play this thing. I'm not playing anymore." The drummers and dancers around him stopped, and everyone's eyes fell on him. Qingyang, who was wearing a light veil, looked at the person at her feet coldly, and said indifferently, "Don't say such words to me, in my green pear palace, no one will stop you from leaving. If you really don't want to do this anymore, you can leave now, and we can save ourselves some trouble. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and looked at her, gritting his teeth. He had said similar words many times, but he was no match for her, so he had to obediently accept the training. He could only crawl up and continue as if his bones were broken. In the beginning, he was a little afraid of this woman, but after getting along with her for a long time, he realized that this woman was different from the people outside. In the words of his previous life, she was an artist who was obsessed with the art of singing and dancing. She did not care about the messy things outside of Green Pear Palace, and only lived in her own world. Because he understood this, he dared to roll around in this Green Pear Palace. Seeing his listless appearance, Qingyang furrowed her brows. She gestured with her arms and said, "You can't be like this. Your mentality is very important. You have to focus, you have to put your entire being into it." She pointed to the side and said, "You go to the side first, see how we do it, and feel it with your heart." Yu Qianqiu nodded repeatedly as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Then, he ran to the side and sat under a huge brown wooden pillar. The pillar was engraved with the words "green pears" in the wilting. He sat on the 2 steps of green jade, and looked at the group of professionals. He sighed in his heart. That Jin Taizong really lived the life of an emperor, and he even had a professional royal song and dance troupe to entertain him. As expected of a rich and powerful life. Qingyang clapped her hands, making a crisp sound, and then made a beautiful hand gesture. The singers and dancers quickly changed their formation, and the heart-stirring chords formed by several musical instruments sounded, and the atmosphere in the palace suddenly became relaxed and carefree. Yu Qianqiu was slightly startled, and he felt that this tune was very familiar. The group of dancers all had charming smiles on their faces as they danced around Qingyang. Their unbridled joy were clear to see. Qingyang's unsmiling face melted like an ancient iceberg, and her dance was very simple. She wandered around the group of dancers, and it seemed like she was dancing, but it didn't seem like she was dancing. It was as if she was free and unfettered in the world of mortals. Seeing this, Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and he only wanted to praise her, how fast she changed her expression, and how professional she was. Following the change of the tune, the men rolled to Qingyang's feet and began to form a formation. Qingyang leisurely stepped on the backs of the men and sat on the back of one of them. Her bare, slender, jade-like feet stepped on the back of another man. She rested her elbows on her knees and supported her cheeks with her palms. She tilted her head and looked at Yu Qianqiu with a smile. Then, she pretended to take an imaginary wine glass from a female dancer and tossed it around. She giggled and gently tapped her feet on the back of the male dancer. Her toes curved in a seductive arc, and she appeared to be very carefree. She gently laughed and began to sing the song that Yu Qianqiu was very familiar with, "The world of mortals is so funny, infatuation is the most boring. No matter how cold the wind is, I don't want to escape. No matter how beautiful the flowers are, I don't want them, let me float. Cry today, laugh tomorrow, I don't ask for anyone to understand, I'm full of pride. The song is singing, the dance is dancing, the night is long, and the dawn is looking for happiness." Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and he was immersed in the song, unable to extricate himself from it. After the song was finished, the music stopped, and the dancers left the stage. Qingyang returned to her expressionless face, and she walked over and asked, "What do you think after my arrangement?" Yu Qianqiu slowly came back to his senses. Sitting there, he looked at her and shook his head in amazement. After she added the harmony of other instruments to the monotonous music he had originally made, the song, "Laughing at the World of Mortals," was performed incisively and vividly by her. After hearing and seeing it, people could fully feel the carefree feeling of laughing at the world of mortals. What was a professional? The person in front of him was a true professional, and the essence of the song was completely revealed. It was difficult for people not to be immersed in it. How do you know this song? Yu Qianqiu asked in surprise. I heard it from the maid beside Ji Wu. It is said that she was originally your subordinate. I heard her sing a few of your songs, and they are indeed unique. However, the one I like the most is still the one I just heard. This song contains the state of mind that I have always wanted to pursue, laughing at the world of mortals. Qingyang said lightly, if I didn't really like you and wanted to see you, do you think I would bring an outsider to the Green Pear Palace? I see. Yu Qianqiu helplessly scratched his forehead. Needless to say, the person beside Ji Wu was undoubtedly Lu Yanqing. Qingyang looked at him and suddenly frowned. She shook her head in confusion and said, after interacting with you for a few days, I really can't believe that a person with a mind like yours could compose a song like this. It is completely different from your words and actions. Music is the voice of the heart. I deeply suspect that this is not your doing. How could you possibly compose a song like this? However, I have never heard a similar song from the famous songs that the Immortal Palace has collected from the three realms, so I have no evidence to prove my suspicions. Yu Qianqiu looked at her speechlessly. What was a professional? An expert would know once they made their move. Her eyes could immediately tell that these songs were not composed by him. He wanted to honestly admit it, but when he thought about the fact that he was riding on a tiger and couldn't back down, it would be no different from deliberately lying to Jean Tai. Thus, he decided not to admit it even if he was beaten to death. However, Qingyang's tone suddenly changed. She sighed and said, however, when I was in the Green Pear Palace and saw your new song with my own ears, I understood that this song was clearly created by you after you received the Immortal Emperor's decree. You flattered and flattered the Immortal Emperor and the Immortal Empress. It should not have been plagiarized from someone else. Only then did I believe that there are people called geniuses in this world. It is my honor to be able to dance with you. Ah. Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He scratched his face and said awkwardly, it's not as exaggerated as you say, right? It should be my honor. He couldn't understand why women liked this kind of whining thing. If it wasn't for the fact that he saw Bai Suzhen moaning in that cave and that he wanted to get close to a beautiful woman, who would have thought that he would make this kind of thing? He didn't think that this kind of thing would be so popular here. From this, it could be seen how lacking the spiritual and cultural life of this world was. The effect of this kind of thing was probably greatly reduced in his previous life. You don't need to be modest. Good is good, but there are also bad points. Even though you are a genius, you are not able to make good use of it. I can see that your foundation in this area is very poor and you are completely relying on your innate talent. Qingyang suddenly paused and her expression became serious. She stared at Yu Qianqiu and said in a serious tone, actually, with your talent in this area, it is a waste to be the sect leader of the world commerce. If you are willing, after the Immortal Emperor's wedding, I can ask for you to join the Immortal Palace as the Vice Palace Lord of the Green Pear Palace. I guarantee that the cultivation resources you will obtain will not be less than what you would obtain by fighting outside. How about it? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.